Chapter 394. How is Aijia resourceful? Aijia is just idle all day long, so Aijia cares about the future of you juniors. At Aijia's age, isn't Aijia's hope that you can all live a sweet life in the future? You are 26 years old, and the one before you has been gone for 3 years. You shouldn't delay like this. Do you have a plan in mind? The Empress Dowager asked Lu Heng with a smile. Other than Qin Yining, the other two girls were already blushing, but they couldn't help but look at Lu Heng's appearance. Lu Heng was indeed a noble, handsome, and elegant man. Although he was the second wife, Lu Heng didn't have a son, so it didn't matter if he was the second wife or not. As long as he could give birth to a son, he would be the legitimate son. In addition, the Lu Men family was such a huge existence. The history of the Lu Men family was longer than that of Beiji and de Zhou combined. Its financial resources could be said to be comparable to that of a country, and its industries were involved in all walks of life. The slightest movement would cause economic turmoil in the country. Even among the court officials, many were members of the Lu Men family. And Lu Heng was the second son of the first wife of such a powerful family. Being able to marry him was even more glorious than marrying the emperor or Wang Yi. Which girl didn't yearn for love? The two girls only glanced at Lu Heng, and they couldn't help blushing. Lu Heng's ears also turned red, which was unexpected by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager couldn't help laughing. It seems that Heng Ji has someone he likes. Replying to the Empress Dowager, without waiting for Lu Heng to answer, a palace servant outside the hall reported, "Prince Zhongshuan has arrived." The Empress Dowager's smile widened. "Quickly invite him in." The hall door opened, and Pang Xiao strode into the hall, wearing a white brocade robe, a jade belt around his waist, and a purple gold hairpin and tasseled crown on his head. Seeing that the womenfolk in the room had already taken their seats, and Qin Yining and the Sun clan were still sitting at the table, Pang Xiao had an idea and bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager without batting an eyelid. "Greetings, Empress Dowager." The Empress Dowager snorted and said angrily, "You little monkey, it's not easy to invite you here for a meal. Every time, you are busy with work. I don't know how busy you are. Don't you miss me?" When Qin Yining heard the Empress Dowager's tone, he couldn't help but take another look at her. It seemed that in the Empress Dowager's heart, she was closer to Pang Xiao than to Lu Heng. Because in front of Lu Heng, the Empress Dowager was only courteous and concerned, but in front of Pang Xiao, she treated him like her own nephew. She could laugh and scold him. Pang Xiao smiled. Her phoenix eyes were as gentle as spring water. The corners of her mouth curved, revealing her neat white teeth. She looked like a spring breeze. "Empress Dowager, how could I not miss you? I didn't come, but didn't I send you a box of food before?" The Empress Dowager pulled Pang Xiao over and had him sit on the other side of her. "You are considerate. The nourishing soup made by your Fu's cook is really good. As long as the Empress Dowager likes it." Pang Xiao continued to smile. He was sitting at a position where he could see Qin Yining when he raised his head. But when his gaze swept over her, there was a bit of disdain and coldness in his eyes. The Empress Dowager calmly looked at this person and then looked at Qin Yining. She smiled gently and had Lu Heng sit down to continue the previous topic. "Heng should really remarry. Your family is big and your business is big. You're also busy with your business. You can't not have someone by your side who cares about you. In Aijia's opinion, with Heng He's talent, only the daughter of an official family can match him. What do you think?" Lu Heng smiled slightly and then looked at Qin Yining. From his angle, he could see the side of Qin Yining's good friend's face. She had a high nose, cherry lips, and long eyelashes that were like small fans. Not to mention this woman's intelligence, just looking at her appearance, he wouldn't be able to see enough of her in a lifetime. The Empress Dowager saw his gaze and couldn't help smiling as she said, "Today, Aijia has invited several madams and misses to eat. Since you are all fated to meet and are not outsiders, how about this? If Hing Ji like someone, just say it. Aijia will make the decision for you." Lu Heng was a bit surprised because the Empress Dowager was a very cautious person. Normally, she wouldn't act like this. But his heart was shaking in his chest. His eyes couldn't help but look at Qin Yining's beautiful face. His reaction was so straightforward that it made everyone present have different thoughts. The members of the Sun clan anxiously held Qin Yining's hand and found that Qin Yining's hand was sweaty. Qin Yining was really scared this time. If the Empress Dowager decreed her marriage and gave her to Lu Heng, she really didn't have the right to refuse. If she dared to refuse the Empress Dowager's gift, the consequences would be unimaginable. But she had already decided on Pang Xiao. She didn't like anyone else and didn't want to marry anyone else. Pang Xiao was a hero, not a mediocre man. Once such a hero entered her heart, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to fall in love with anyone else in her life. Qin Yining kept her head down. Her long eyelashes covered the emotions in her eyes. But Pang Xiao, who was sitting opposite her, was very distressed and angry. He frowned slightly and narrowed his eyes at Lu Heng. Lu Heng didn't notice Pang Xiao's gaze at all. He only smiled and said, "How could I not appreciate the Empress Dowager's kindness? Lord Qin is your Majesty's right-hand man and has a good reputation for being wise and intelligent. Miss Qin's talent and appearance are outstanding. This Lu is fascinated. If I can take her as my wife, Lu Heng will definitely be grateful to the Empress Dowager." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She immediately felt that her body was as stiff as a rock and couldn't move. The members of the Sun clan and the others were also surprised by Lu Heng's straightforwardness. The Empress Dowager smiled slightly. Just as she was about to speak, Pang Xiao, who was sitting next to her, suddenly stood up and flipped the square table in front of him. With a loud crash, the cups and plates fell to the ground and shattered. The womenfolk screamed and jumped away, but most of the dishes and soup still splashed on Lu Heng. Some of it splashed on the Empress Dowager. Pang Xiao's eyes were red with anger. He was like a lion that had been provoked. He pointed at Lu Heng and cursed, "You son of a bitch, don't you dare have any thoughts about her. Pang Zhishi. You're crazy." Lu Heng was born in a prestigious family. He had never been insulted like this since he was young. Today, the Empress Dowager has the intention to bestow this marriage. I'm replying to the Empress Dowager. Who do you think you are? How dare you interrupt? You can choose whoever you want. How can a weakling like you have the right to covet the woman I've slept with? Vulgar and improper. Lu Heng was so angry that his face turned red. You're just a small Wang Yi. In front of my Lu family, you're nothing. If I want to crush you, I don't even need 2 fingers. I can crush you with 1 finger. Nonsense. Why don't you try to crush me? I'll kill you right now. Hey! Stop, stop. The Empress Dowager's skirt was drenched with vinegar fish. At this moment, she didn't care about her clothes anymore. She pulled Pang Xiao with one hand. Wet Nurse Chen and the palace servants also pulled Pang Xiao's robe with all their strength from behind. At this time, the imperial guards outside the hall who heard the noise came in one after another. They were stunned when they saw the mess in the room. The Empress Dowager looked at the group of imperial guards who were about to draw their swords. She couldn't help but stomp her feet and say, "Who let you in? Get out. Empress Dowager, we're here to protect you. Aijia told you to get out." Seeing the Empress Dowager so determined, the imperial guards could only retreat. Before they left, they looked worriedly at Pang Xiao and Lu Heng, who were glaring at each other like fighting cocks. They couldn't afford to offend either of these two big shots. Even in front of your majesty, they had to be somewhat cautious. If they really fought, who would these small fries dare to pull back? Since the Empress Dowager told them to get out, then they got out. Qin Yining and the Sun Clan supported each other and hid far away, but the corners of their skirts were still splashed by the vegetable soup. The Sun Clan's face was ashen. They looked suspiciously at Qin Yining and wanted to say something, but stopped. Qin Yining was in shock and couldn't recover for a long time. She believed that if Pang Xiao didn't do anything, she would definitely be betrothed to Lu Heng. But she didn't expect that Pang Xiao would declare his ownership in such a violent way. He didn't hesitate to thoroughly offend Lu Heng and the Lu clan behind him. He also slapped the Empress Dowager's face. He was dressed in a reckless appearance, but he did it quickly and accurately. He suppressed Lu Heng's marriage proposal just like that. Lu Heng gritted his teeth. He took a few deep breaths but still couldn't calm his anger. He clenched one hand behind his back into a fist and pointed at Pang Xiao with the other hand. You wait. After he finished speaking, he ignored the Empress Dowager and arrogantly left with a flick of his sleeves. He walked with his back straight and his steps calm, as if he was the one with the highest status in this room and not the Empress Dowager. On the other hand, the Empress Dowager didn't have any reaction. It was enough to see the Lu clan status and the weight of his words to Pang Xiao. The Empress Dowager angrily said, "What are you still doing? Go and send Second Master Lu off." She looked at the womenfolk in the room and impatiently waved her hand. "Aijia is tired. You can all leave." "Yes." The womenfolk still hadn't recovered from their shock. They stiffly bowed and retreated. Pang Xiao supported the Empress Dowager a few steps back and sat down in a clean place. Wet Nurse Chen led people in to clean up. The Empress Dowager fiercely pinched Pang Xiao's arm and beat it a few times. "You little bastard, little bastard. Do you think we're still in the countryside? You dare to flip Aijia's table and challenge that surnamed Lu? Is it worth it for a woman? Do you know how powerful the Lu clan is? You're really angering Aijia to death." "Empress Dowager, please calm down. This subject is also angry. That Qin clan is mine. Do you think I'll let other people touch me? That surnamed Lu is dreaming. You're really... You're holding a grudge against her for killing your father and refusing to marry her. The capital is abuzz with news about her and her reputation has hit rock bottom. Now that Aijia finally found a good home for her, you won't marry her and won't let others marry her. You're too overbearing." Pang Xiao righteously said, "In short, even if I don't want her, I won't let other men touch her." "Then you might as well let her become a monk." The Empress Dowager angrily roared. Pang Xiao saw that the Empress Dowager was really angry. Only then did he shut his mouth and stop arguing. He let the Empress Dowager scold him to her heart's content. Qin Yining and the Sun clan left Ci and Palace. Along the way, they could hear the womenfolk discussing in low voices. After leaving the palace, they got on the prepared carriage. Bing Tang and Ji Yun saw the Sun clan's ugly expressions and didn't dare to follow. Chapter 395. Qin Yining felt helpless when she was questioned by the Sun clan. "Mother, there are all kinds of rumors about me outside. I don't care about them. I don't even care what the Dowager Duchess says behind my back. But does Mother not believe me?" Sigh. In fact, the Sun clan already regretted asking this question. This matter wasn't Qin Yining's fault. It wasn't her intention to be snatched away. No matter what happened in between, she was the one who was wronged. As a mother, she didn't stand up for her daughter and instead questioned her daughter. It was really wrong. Sister E, don't think too much. I don't mean anything else. Pulling Qin Yining into her arms, the Sun Clan patted her shoulder and said, don't be afraid. When we go back, we'll ask your father to think of a solution. He's very smart and can solve anything. Your father has already taken care of your matter. It's okay. Qin Yining listened to the Sun Clan's trust and admiration for Qin Huaiyuan in their words. She couldn't help but smile and nod. I know. I'm not afraid. She was indeed not afraid. After today's matter, she could see Pang Zhao's sincerity towards her even more clearly. She looked forward to the future even more. In front of the Empress Dowager and the other noble womenfolk, Pang Zhao was willing to go head-to-head with the Lu family for her. When she was nervously thinking about how to reject Lu Heng, Pang Zhao had already resolutely resolved the matter. If this wasn't sincerity, then what was? However, now that things had developed to this point, it was already beyond her expectations. It seemed that she should go back home and discuss her marriage with Pang Zhao with her father. Although it was a bit embarrassing for a girl to propose marriage herself. For the sake of a lifetime of happiness, Qin Yining didn't care about these things in front of her father. After returning to the Fu, the Dowager Duchess couldn't help but pull the two of them forward out of curiosity. She carefully asked them about what they had seen and heard at the Dowager Duchess' place. Qin Yining and the Sun Clan only talked about the trivial matters, but they didn't mention anything about Pang Zhao flipping the table. However, it was already a great honor for them to be summoned by the Empress Dowager. Old Madam still felt a little sour in her heart. After all, her son had become an important official of the imperial court, but the one who was in the limelight wasn't her, his mother. Instead, it was the Sun Clan that benefited. Because the Sun Clan was preoccupied with today's matter, for the first time, they didn't oppose the old madam with equal harshness. Instead, he was thinking about the consequences of Pang Zhao's actions today. After the Qin Huaiyuan court was dismissed, the family of three gathered in the bedroom. The Sun Clan dismissed the servants and told Qin Huaiyuan everything that had happened today in detail. Leoi, our family's sister Yi, is a pure and innocent girl, but her reputation has been ruined by these reckless people. The Empress Dowager's intention is to let Sister Yi be the second wife of that man surnamed Lu. We don't know the background of that man surnamed Lu. We only know that he looks like a dog. Who knows if he is sincere to Sister Yi or not. Also, Prince Zhongshuan is too arrogant in his actions. He is also holding the grudge of what happened to you in the past. With this kind of temperament, plus the grudges of his father's generation, I don't think he is a good person. Hearing this, the Sun Clan's daughter was so worried that tears fell down. She pulled Qin Yining's hand and said, "My daughter, why is her life so hard? Not to mention that she hasn't enjoyed a good life since she was young, she only had a few days of stable life. Now, she has to be criticized outside. Looking at those people, I really want to tear their mouths apart." Qin Yining couldn't bear to see the Sun Clan cry. She quickly got up and hugged the Sun Clan's daughter to comfort her. Qin Huaiyuan also took out a handkerchief and handed it to Qin Yining, indicating that she should wipe the Sun Clan's tears. Qin Huaiyuan sighed and asked Qin Yining, "Sister Yi, tell me the truth. Do you want to marry Pang Zhishi?" When the Sun Clan's daughter heard this, she immediately sat up straight and said, "No. That boorish man caused our daughter to suffer so much. I don't agree." Qin Huaiyuan patted the Sun Clan's daughter's shoulder and said with a smile, "Madam, don't be impatient. Let's listen to what our daughter has to say. Since ancient times, marriage has been decided by the parents and the matchmaker. Although our sister Yi is intelligent, she's still an unmarried girl. What can she know?" Sun Clan said anxiously, "It's precisely at times like this that we, as parents, Need to keep a close watch on our child so that she won't go astray. Madam is right. Qin Huaiyuan smiled comfortingly at Sun Clan. He first confirmed her thoughts before saying, "It's just that our daughter is different from those other simple-minded girls. We have to respect her wishes." Sun Clan's voice became louder. "You're harming her by doting on her like this. What's so good about Pang Zhishi? Don't shout. This isn't something that can be shouted about." Qin Huaiyuan said good-naturedly, "Our daughter's experience is different from those girls from wealthy families. Her vision is also broader than theirs. Naturally, she has her own ideas about marriage. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, we haven't brought her any good fortune since she was young. She has suffered for so many years. Could it be that she came back to us just to be controlled by us?" Sun Clan was speechless by Qin Huaiyuan's words. For a long time, they couldn't find the words to respond. Qin Huaiyuan then asked Qin Yining, "Sister Yi, tell me, do you want to marry Pang Zhishi? You don't have to consider too many factors. You don't have to think about the matters of the imperial court. Just think about whether he's worth entrusting your life to." Qin Yining slowly nodded. "Father, I'm not going to marry anyone else but him." "Silly child, you." Sun Clan's eyes were filled with tears. Qin Huaiyuan pulled Sun Clan's hand and patted it, successfully stopping her from shouting. Then, he turned to Qin Yining and said, "You don't plan to change. Actually, if you marry Lu Heng, your future will be more stable. The Lu family is a century-old distinguished family. Their power is intertwined. Even your majesty has to be wary of them. Lu Heng is refined and noble. He doesn't have any bad habits. Although you're marrying him as his second wife, he doesn't have a legitimate son. Moreover, from what I've seen, Lu Heng seems to be interested in you. If you marry Pang Zhishi, you'll face more dangers and hardships. Although he doesn't have military power, your majesty has always been wary of his prestige in the military. If you marry him, you'll have to face the dangers and trials of the future together with him. You'll have a very tiring life." Qin Huaiyuan patiently analyzed the pros and cons. However, he still didn't make any decisions. He only looked at Qin Yining and waited for her to make her own choice. Qin Huaiyuan made it clear that no matter what she chose, he would support her unconditionally. Qin Yining was extremely touched. Her eyes were slightly wet as she said, "Father, I understand what you're saying." However, she still chose Pang Shao. Qin Huaiyuan nodded with a smile and said, "Father understands. Since it's like this, why don't I help you get married? Leave the rest to me. You should go and rest first." Qin Yining looked at the sobbing Sun Clan and then at Qin Huaiyuan, who was busy comforting the Sun Clan. Then, she quietly left. Qin Yining couldn't guess what Qin Huaiyuan would do. However, with her father's promise, she felt especially at ease. The news of Pang Shao flipping the table in Ci and Palace quickly spread throughout the imperial court. Everyone was guessing what the Lu family would do. The next day, Qin Huaiyuan knelt down before Minister Qing of the Ministry of War and kowtowed in front of everyone. Chapter 396. Ever since Qin Huaiyuan came to Dezhou, he had been keeping a low profile and doing things cautiously. Although he was put in an important position by Li Qitian, he was never ostentatious. This was the first time he had come out of class to kneel and beg for your majesty to uphold justice. Not only Li Qitian, but all the civil and military officials looked at Qin Huaiyuan in confusion. Pang Shao and Ji Ziyu looked at each other. Both of them frowned slightly and looked at Qin Huaiyuan calmly. Li Qitian had some guesses, but due to the situation, he could only say in a low voice, "Minister Qin, please rise. Whatever grievances you have suffered, please tell us." Qin Huayuan's eyes reddened in an instant. His beard trembled, and he had to close his eyes tightly to hide the tears in his eyes. He said in a hoarse voice, "Your Majesty, this old subject has no children, only a daughter. When she was young, something happened to her and she was stranded outside. It wasn't easy for me to find her. This old subject treats her like a treasure. My love for her is more important than my life. I really hold her in my arms for fear that she will fall and melt. Everything that happened in the past was out of helplessness. Between loyalty to the emperor and my daughter, this subject has wronged my daughter. This subject only thought that after coming to Dezhou, everything would be a new opportunity. At that time, I would make it up to my beloved daughter. But who would have thought that not only would this subject's daughter encounter misfortune on the way here, but this subject's daughter would be forcibly taken away by Prince Zhongshuan as soon as she arrived in the capital. Although my daughter has been brought back home, her reputation has been ruined. Who knows how many people outside are gossiping?" Qin Huayuan pressed his forehead to the ground. Finally, tears flowed down his face. He sobbed, "This subject begs your Majesty to uphold justice for this subject's beloved daughter. This subject's daughter is well educated and reasonable. She is intelligent and steady. She is not a frivolous person at all. But the outside world said that she is so unbearable. What did this subject's daughter do wrong? Why did she have to suffer such grievances? All these mistakes were caused by Prince Zhongshuan. I beg your Majesty to punish the culprit and return justice to my daughter." Qin Huayuan's voice was choked with sobs and tears of blood flowed out of every word. In the end, he pressed his forehead to the ground and sobbed uncontrollably. He even took off his official hat and put it to the side, kowtowing repeatedly and crying out in grief, "Your Majesty, please uphold justice for me. Punish Pang Zhishi severely." All the civil and military officials were stunned by this scene. No one would have thought that Qin Huayuan would actually participate in Prince Zhongshuan's performance. That rumor had not been circulating for a day or two. Previously, Qin Huayuan had held back, and some people had even mocked Qin Huayuan behind his back for being as cowardly as a mouse and not even daring to protect his own daughter. But today, he suddenly submitted a memorial to the throne. It was obvious that Pang Zhao's act of flipping the table and humiliating Qin Yining had really angered him. As a father, he finally couldn't stand it anymore. When Minister Qing of the Ministry of War saw this, his lips curled into a smile. Since they were all impeaching Prince Zhongshuan, he wouldn't fight with Qin Huayuan over this. Qing Meng stood to the side and watched the show. Li Qitian's hands gradually clenched as he held on to the dragon throne, and his brows furrowed. He didn't think that things would develop to this point. The Empress Dowager's Ci and palace had invited the three noble daughters, Lu Heng and Pang Xiao, to the banquet. His goal was very simple. He wanted to use Qin Yining to cause discord between Lu Heng and Pang Xiao. Li Qitian had long discovered that Lu Heng was interested in Qin Yining, and he also knew that Pang Xiao had feelings for Qin Yining. It was only because of their father's hatred that they were in the middle that they were always at odds with each other. No man would feel good if they saw the woman they liked and had a good life marrying someone else. Therefore, regardless of whether Qin Yining could marry Lu Heng or not, Pang Xiao and Lu Heng would become enemies. However, Li Qitian never expected that Pang Xiao, who had always respected the Empress Dowager, would flip the table on the spot and make Lu Heng so angry that he would leave in a huff. Now that things had gotten out of hand, he actually wanted Qin Huayuan to participate in the memorial. This really wasn't Li Qitian's original intention. It had already exceeded the scope of his imagination. While Li Qitian was deep in thought, Qin Huayuan kowtowed again and said in a clear voice, "I beg your Majesty to make the decision. If your Majesty isn't willing to severely punish Prince Zhongshuan, this old official can't continue to be an official. As an official, this official has let his own daughter suffer so much injustice. This official can't even protect her, nor can I get justice for her. What's the point of this official being an official? Qin Huayuan's voice was tearful, and he kowtowed again humbly. Li Qitian came back to his senses from his sorrowful cries. He coughed and said, "Beloved Minister Qin, please get up first. Severely punish Pang Xiao." How could that be possible? Although Li Qitian was afraid of Pang Xiao was the only person in the cabinet who could be considered his faction. If he severely punished Pang Xiao according to Qin Huayuan, wouldn't Li Qitian have no one in the cabinet? When the time came, would he have to listen to the old officials and aristocratic families of Beiji? Li Qitian shook his head in his heart. He absolutely couldn't severely punish Pang Xiao. However, it was indeed Pang Xiao who was at fault in this matter. Thinking of this, Li Qitian could only softly persuade Qin Huayuan, hoping that he could be more sensible. I can understand dear official Qin's feelings, but you are all officials of the same court, and you are all my trusted subordinates. If there is internal strife, how can you do your job well? Dear official Qin, you must consider the overall situation. Your Majesty, if you can't give this official's daughter an explanation today, this official will no longer be a minister, and I will no longer be an official of the same court as Prince Zhongshuan. Prince Zhongshuan is actually so presumptuous in front of your Majesty. When the time comes, this official will record his evil deeds on paper and paste it all over the capital, so that everyone can see his evil face. The veins on Li Qitian's forehead throbbed when he heard this. He had used this method to deal with Dian's incapable ruler in the past. He didn't expect Qin Huayuan to use this method to arouse public opinion. If these words really spread, how could Pang Xiao stand firm in the cabinet? The current Li Qitian absolutely wouldn't allow Pang Xiao to leave the cabinet. Li Qitian felt that he had encountered an unprecedented problem. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly saw the light. Dear official Qin. Li Qitian stood up and slowly walked down from the throne. He went to Qin Huayuan and helped him up with both hands. Then, he instructed Li Guanwen to bring a handkerchief for Qin Huayuan to wipe his face. Qin Huayuan wiped his tears. He lowered his head and waited for Li Qitian's instructions. Li Qitian said, "Dear official Qin, Prince Zhongshuan is Zhen's right-hand man. Back then, when we conquered Dezhou, he also made great contributions. It can be said that Prince Zhongshuan's age and talent are very compatible with your daughter. Since the two of them have the heart, why don't we help this couple? Your Majesty. My daughter was forced to do so. The best home for a woman in this life is nothing more than finding a reliable husband." Although Prince Zhongshuan was muddle-headed in the past, Zhen believes that he lost control because he couldn't control himself. How about this, Zhen will be the Baoshan and betroth your daughter to Prince Zhongshuan as the first consort. Qin Huayuan lowered his head with an extremely aggrieved expression on his face. Li Qitian patiently persuaded, as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. The grudge between dear official Qin and General Qing can't be blamed on you. Their standpoints are different, and they each serve their own masters. Today, why don't you make a big deal into a small one and forget about the grudge? With Zhen's marriage, I believe that in the future, no one in the world will dare to make any trouble for your daughter. Dear official Qin, what do you think? Qin Huayuan pursed his lips in embarrassment, as if he was unwilling. Li Qitian glared at Pang Xiao again. Zhen will betroth the Qin clan to you as the first consort. Are you willing? Li Qitian's expression was too serious, as if Pang Xiao dared to say half a word of no, he would directly order people to drag Pang Xiao out and behead him. Pang Xiao's heart had already exploded in front of his eyes with mountain torrents, earthquakes, tsunamis, violent storms, and resplendent fireworks. If it weren't for his amazing willpower, he would have laughed 3 times and knelt down to thank Father Xiaoyu for granting his wish. This move was too practical, as expected of the wise Panon. He actually solved the important matter of their marriage so easily, and even let your majesty personally grant the marriage. But no matter how happy he was, Pang Shao still didn't forget how he should feel. Pang Shao reluctantly nodded and said, "I'll listen to your majesty's instructions." Li Qitian felt a bit more comfortable, and then turned to Qin Huayuan. "Dear official Qin, what do you think?" Qin Huayuan was silent for a while, then picked up his official hat, patted the dust off, and put it back on. He solemnly saluted Li Qitian. "This official is reckless, and has troubled your majesty. This official will follow your majesty's arrangements." Li Qitian heaved a long sigh, nodded, and said, "Good." Li Guanwen, write an edict, Qin Clan Zining, to grant Prince Zhongshuan Pang Shao as the first wife. The wedding date is set to be the 11th of next month, and order the two manors to arrange it on their own. "Yes." Li Guanwen obeyed, and hurriedly wrote it down, and wrote the edict carefully. After letting your majesty seal it, he ordered someone to deliver the edict. Qin Huayuan lowered his head and didn't speak, still looking dejected. At this time, the Minister of War, Qing Meng, stood up. He originally thought that Qin Huayuan would be able to skin Pang Shao alive, but he didn't expect that in the end, even his daughter would be involved. Qing Meng secretly cursed Qin Huayuan for being an idiot, and stepped forward to righteously participate in Pang Zhao's performance, which used to indiscriminately kill innocent people. Li Qitian's forehead twitched. Pang Shao was causing trouble for him again. He had just settled one matter, and now there was another. Li Qitian knew Qing Meng's purpose. The cabinet must let Pang Shao have a firm foothold. Therefore, after thinking about it for a while, Li Qitian intended to refute it. Unexpectedly, before he could speak, Qin Huayuan stood up and said angrily, "Minister Qing, you are wrong. Prince Zhongshuan is young and talented, and has outstanding military achievements." At that time, because of different positions, he attacked and occupied northern Ji, and made great contributions to the establishment of the Dezhou dynasty. How can Minister Qing say that Prince Zhongshuan is a devil who kills people without blinking an eye? You! Minister Qing was simply stunned by Qin Huayuan. Weren't you just participating in Pang Zhao's performance? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Qin Huayuan glanced at the Minister of War and said righteously, "When I participated in his performance, he was still my enemy. Now that your majesty has granted him a marriage, he is my son-in-law. As his father-in-law, if I don't speak up for my son-in-law, am I supposed to wait for an outsider?" Minister Qing was speechless for a while. The ministers also began to talk about it. Seeing that Minister Qing was not effective, the other officials of the Lu faction also stood up to participate in the performance. At this time, the origin of Qin Huayuan's Panon the Wise could be seen. He spoke methodically, but he could overturn all the words of participating in Pang Shao. Pang Shao stood to the side, and was shocked by Qin Huayuan's ability to argue with the group of scholars. Chapter 397. As soon as your majesty gave the order, Qin Huayuan's manservant, who was listening to the news at the palace gates, received the news. He scampered towards the horse tied to a tree branch, jumped onto the horse, and galloped back home to report the news. Qin Yining was doing needlework with the Sun clan in the room when she heard the joyous shouts of an older female servant coming from the second gate. "Old madam! Madam! Young miss! Great news, great news!" This shout shocked everyone in the room. The old madam lifted the curtain and came out. She anxiously said, "What's going on? Speak quickly." The older female servant guarding the second gate said with a face full of smiles, "Old madam, great news. The young man who was following master just came to pass on the news. Today, your majesty has decreed that our family's fourth young miss will be betrothed to Prince Zhongshuan as the princess consort. He received the news and came back to pass on the news. The imperial decree bestowing the marriage from the palace is about to arrive. When the entire family heard this, they were extremely shocked. Everyone's gazes simultaneously looked towards Qin Yining, who was supporting the Sun clan in the corridor. Qin Yining's hands gradually clenched, and he lowered his head in self-abasement. The eighth young miss was stunned at first, but then she happily said, "Fourth older sister, congratulations." The eighth young miss congratulations made everyone come back to their senses. They all began to congratulate the Sun clan and Qin Yining. The old madam was also unable to contain her joy. Good, good. Although being the princess consort isn't as glorious as being your majesty's favored consort, in the end, our family's daughter has found a good home. Now that the fourth young miss is married, the next ones are Sister Hui and Bao. The men in the outer courtyard also received the news. Qin Yu, Qin Han, second master, and third master all came in to congratulate them. They then anxiously went to prepare the incense table and candlesticks to receive the imperial decree. The old madam put her palms together and bowed towards the sky. "I didn't expect that we would receive good news after coming to Dezhou. This is truly the blessing of our ancestors, the blessing of our ancestors." Second master smiled. "It's not only the blessing of our ancestors, it's also thanks to eldest brother's ability. Now that I have an official position in the Ministry of Rites, and third brother's business has been properly arranged. This is all thanks to eldest brother's arrangements." "That's right." Third master smiled and nodded. The Qin clan had experienced massacres, starvation, and plundering. They had once again stood firm. Although they had sacrificed many people, their backbone had never disappeared. When the family's preparations were more or less done, the imperial edict from the palace. An incense burner and incense table were prepared in the middle of the spacious courtyard. Futons were placed on the ground, and the whole family knelt according to their status. The eunuch who delivered the imperial edict smiled and unfolded the bright yellow imperial edict. "By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees that the daughter of the Minister of Rites, Qin Huayuan, Yi Ning, is 16 years old. She is gentle and elegant, talented and beautiful, gentle and modest, and has a pure heart. The Empress Dowager and I are very happy to hear that. Prince Zhongshuan, Pang Shao, is 24 years old. He is of marriageable age. The Qin clan is unbetrothed. She and Pang Shao are a perfect match. The Qin clan's Yi Ning is betrothed to Prince Zhongshuan, Pang Shao, as the first wife. All the ceremonies will be arranged by the two families. The wedding will be held on May 11th. By the Emperor. Thank you for your Majesty's grace." The whole family kowtowed solemnly. Qin Yining knelt in the middle of the room. She lowered her head and raised her hands high above her head to receive the imperial edict. The eunuch smiled and said, "Congratulations, Miss Qin." Second old master, third old master, and the two cousins immediately greeted the eunuch politely. They gave him a big red envelope and led him to tea. Qin Yining held the imperial edict in her hands and read the words on it again. She still felt like she was in a dream. She always felt that although she and Pang Shao had feelings for each other, it would not be easy for them to get married. Your Majesty would not allow Pang Shao to have a powerful in-law. After all, Pang Zhongjing's death was in between them. But she did not expect that Qin Huayuan would succeed and make Li Qitian give the imperial edict willingly. Was she really going to marry Pang Shao? Only at this moment did she feel as if a huge rock had been lifted from her heart. She was filled with anticipation and fear for the future. Could it be that this girl is so happy that she has lost her mind? Qin Yining came back to her senses when she heard this kind teasing. She turned around and looked at second old master. Only then did she realize that she had unknowingly followed her family into the main room. Old Madam took Qin Yining's imperial edict and said with a smile, "I'll go and enshrine the imperial edict in the ancestral hall. It will be placed together with your father's imperial edict. This is a happy occasion, a happy occasion." After the dust settled, the Sun clan finally felt relieved. She said happily, "The wedding will be held on May 11th. There is less than a month left. Our sister Yi's hairpin ceremony has not been held yet. We still have to prepare for the wedding. Second sister-in-law, you have to help me." "Of course. This is a happy occasion. Brother Han's wife is about to give birth. Now, Sister Yi has a good in-law. Isn't this a double blessing? This is great." Second Old Madam smiled happily. After Qin Yining was sent back to the bedroom, the Sun clan hurriedly instructed Mother Jean, "It's too late for her to embroider her own dowry. Go and find the best embroiderer and prepare carefully. Sister Yi has to make her own pillow face. During this period of time, you're not allowed to go out in public. Just quietly embroider in the room." After the Sun clan finished speaking, they did not wait for Qin Yining to reply. They rushed out energetically to prepare other things. At this time, Qin Yining was still in shock and could not recover for a long time. Xian Yun, Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and Qiu Lu were already so happy that their faces were flushed red. The four of them exchanged glances and bowed to Qin Yining. "Congratulations, Mississippi. You've gotten what you wanted." Lian Xiaozhou also nodded happily. "Congratulations, elder sister." Qin Yining said absent-mindedly, "You guys can get up." Xian Yun, Bing Tang, "You guys are skillful. Help me embroider a pillow face. My own skills are not good enough." After saying that, Qin Yining sat in the same place and stared blankly. The maidservants could not help but laugh. Qin Yining recalled the various experiences she had with Pang Xiao. From the first time they met, they tested each other. Later on, they gradually fell in love with each other. Then, they made a solemn vow of undying love. To be able to wait until today's imperial edict, she had experienced too much. She had been home for 2 years. In these 2 years, she had experienced more than the previous 14 years combined. Although she had advanced step by step until now and was physically and mentally exhausted, she felt that all the hardships she had suffered in the past were worth it to be able to receive the sincere treatment of the group of people around her and obtain this marriage contract. The imperial edict of marriage had also been passed to Prince Zhongshuan's residence. After Pang Xiao, Yao Qinggu, Madame Ma, and the Yao clan received the edict, the whole family looked at each other speechlessly and laughed silently. Madame Ma slapped her thigh and exclaimed, hurry up and prepare the betrothal gifts. Dai Fu, if you have any treasures, take them out. Also, don't be stingy when you marry a wife. It's not easy for Yi to be with you. She has suffered so many grievances from you previously. You have to express your gratitude properly. As she spoke, Madame Ma had already punched Pang Zhao's shoulder. You rascal. You were born with good fortune. You have such a powerful father-in-law like Minister Qin and are lucky enough to marry a virtuous wife. Your Pang family's ancestral graves are smoking. Pang Xiao was punched in the tendons. He grimaced in pain and said, Grandmother, you're too strong. How can I control you, rascal? Yuping, hurry up and make arrangements. As a mother-in-law, you have to take the initiative and contact your in-laws more. Don't think that your son is great just because he's Wang Yi. Your son is a troublemaker. Yi will be unlucky to marry him. How can you say that about your grandson? Yao clan rebuked without any anger. Yao Qinggu nodded and said, your mother is right. Do as she says. Got it, father. Yao clan immediately went to make arrangements. Pang Shao called Xiaoyu and Su Weiji over and said solemnly, "The 11th of next month is this king's big day. During this period of time, the mansion will be busy. You two help the old madam and old madam make decisions. As for the rules, you can't go against your majesty's wishes to marry the empress. As for the other rules, you can't violate them. Do you understand?" Xiaoyu and Su Weiji nodded quickly. The two of them were good at strategizing, but now they were asked by Pang Shao to make arrangements for the wedding. They really felt that it was a waste of their talents. However, the two of them knew the relationship between Qin Yining and Pang Shao, and they also knew Qin Yining's character. In addition, Your Majesty granted the marriage. At this time, they also felt that Wang Ye's willingness to let them make arrangements for the wedding was a show of great trust in them. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji carefully went to the study to study the rules as if they were dealing with every major event. Since Wang Yi had said that as long as it did not exceed Your Majesty's rule of marrying the empress, and as long as it was in line with the rules of a prince, they could make everything as luxurious as possible. They had to let the family Qin feel their sincerity. Pang Shao calmly sent Xiaoyu and Su Weiji away. Then he ran to the martial arts field with a cold and serious expression. He took off his upper body and wore only a pair of black silk pants. Then he began to practice martial arts on the wooden stakes. He was now extremely excited. He could not find any way to vent his emotions and excessive energy, so he simply practiced martial arts for the entire afternoon. During this time, he broke 3 wooden stakes. Pang Zhao's actions made Huzi, who was following beside him, snicker. It also made Ji Ziyu, who had secretly come to visit, very surprised. "Ah Lan, you're here." Pang Zhao was covered in sweat. A layer of goosebumps had appeared on his skin because of the low temperature of the night. However, he did not mind. He took a handkerchief from Huzi and wiped his sweat. Then he put on a snow-white inner garment. Ji Ziyu's gaze swept over the large and small scars on Pang Zhao's body. Finally, he nodded and raised the wine jar in his hand. "Want a drink?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." Pang Zhao ordered Huzi to have the dishes prepared. Then he went to the bedroom with Ji Ziyu and sat down. Ji Ziyu saw that Pang Zhao was frowning slightly. He looked like he had practiced martial arts for the entire afternoon and still wanted to continue. He could not help but comfort him. "Your Majesty decreed a marriage. You can only obey." Chapter 398. Pang Zhao raised his wine glass and clinked it with Ji Ziyu's, then drank it all in one gulp. Although he was on good terms with Ji Ziyu, both of them had no choice now. They were both people Your Majesty feared, so they had to protect themselves. This matter involved his marriage with Qin Yining, so Pang Zhao didn't dare to be careless. It wasn't that he didn't trust Ji Ziyu, but he didn't trust Li Qitian. Therefore, even though Pang Zhao's heart was bursting with joy, he suppressed it and just drank calmly with Ji Ziyu. Ji Ziyu's exquisite face looked a little sad. His slender eyebrows were knitted together, and the emotions in his eyes were extremely complicated. However, many of the words he wanted to say turned into sighs. He grabbed the hemp rope tied to the mouth of the wine jar with one hand and used his other hand to support the jar. He tilted his head back and drank a few mouthfuls, not caring that his clothes were wet. Pang Zhao saw that Ji Ziyu was drinking to his heart's content, so he didn't use the glass. He took the wine jar in Ji Ziyu's hand with both hands and tilted his head back to drink a few mouthfuls. Ji Ziyu smiled at Pang Zhao. Seeing him gulp down the wine, he swallowed the spicy liquid in his mouth and laughed. "Good. Good. Good." The two of them shared a jar of wine and ate a few mouthfuls of food. Ji Ziyu said, "Bring more wine." Pang Zhao shook his head and patted Ji Ziyu's shoulder. Lon, we can't get drunk. We have things to do tomorrow. Drinking too much will make things worse. Jiziyu frowned and patted Pang Xiao's hand on his shoulder. This is our life. We can't live to the fullest. We can't even choose the person we like for our marriage. We don't even dare to drink to our heart's content. Jiziyu's voice was a little hoarse from the alcohol. Although he drank a lot and was a little drunk, his mind was still clear. It wasn't that he couldn't control his words and actions. However, he couldn't hold back these words. He was so helpless back then. Now that Pang Xiao was bestowed a marriage, he was walking the same path as him. Jiziyu knew that Pang Xiao must be feeling very bad right now. Pang Xiao saw that his brother was so sad because of his own matter. He felt very sorry in his heart. He knew that Ziyu was thinking about his relationship with Li Helan. His Majesty's marriage was a woman who he truly loved and wanted to spend the rest of his life with. Your Majesty's marriage. He was also a woman whom he truly loved and whom he truly loved and wanted to spend the rest of his lives with him. Your Majesty's marriage was. Shoots Pan SSSSSSS his S Xiao's A.S. He's the S. Pang Xiao said sincerely. Alon, the way things are right now is already very good. You saw it in the imperial court today. Minister Qin's abilities are not ordinary. It's not wrong to say that he has the ability to argue with the scholars. If I can have such a father-in-law, I might be able to live a more stable life in the future. Moreover, I really do like the Qin clan. Jiziyu smiled brightly. His peach blossom eyes looked at Pang Xiao's sharp almond-shaped eyes. I know that you like the Qin clan. She's indeed a peerless beauty. However, with your father's murder in between, how can you not feel the slightest bit of resentment in your heart? How can you not resist at all? Pang Xiao couldn't explain in detail, so he just smiled. I've already let go of those things. His forced smile was more painful than anything else in Jiziyu's eyes. However, Jiziyu also knew their current situation. No matter how much he said, he would only add to Pang Xiao's troubles. Life had to go on, and the imperial edict had to be obeyed. Forget it. A good man's ambition is to travel far and not be constrained by love. Since you've accepted it, then it's fine. Jiziyu stood up and said, Jishi, I'll take my leave. I'll send you off. You want to send me off? I'm afraid that others will hear that I'm here to drink with you. If they know, they'll think that we're in cahoots. That won't be easy to explain. Pang Xiao understood Jiziyu's meaning. It's just a drink between good friends. If people who are watching you report back to your Majesty, what's the difference between that and losing one's freedom? However, the current situation was like that. Pang Xiao smiled at Jiziyu, then his face darkened. Take care. I won't send you off. Jiziyu played along and said, Aren't you still busy marrying the enemy's daughter? There's no need to send me off. Go do what you need to do. You. Are you questioning your Majesty? You flatter me. I don't think so. I'm speaking from your heart. Jilan, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Pang Jishi, I think your injuries have healed again. Pang Xiao sent Jiziyu out. Along the way, the two of them quarreled non-stop. Jiziyu walked faster and faster, and Pang Xiao also chased after him. The two of them quarreled all the way to the second door. It was the servants of the residence who couldn't bear to see the two masters quarreling. They were afraid that it would turn into a bloody incident, so they smiled apologetically and came forward to separate the two of them. In the end, Jiziyu left in a huff. Pang Xiao also returned to the study with a cold face. Regardless of how much Li Qitian would laugh at this scene if it were to reach Your Majesty's ears, Ji Ziyu didn't say anything. At this time, in Yangxin Palace Hall, Li Qitian was sitting on a kong by the window. He held a white chess piece in his hand and played against Lu Heng, who was holding a black chess piece. He didn't forget to secretly pay attention to Lu Heng's expression. Younger brother Lu. I presume you already know about the marriage between the Qin and the Zhao families. When Lu Heng heard Li Qitian's polite and careful voice, he smiled slightly and replied politely. Replying to Your Majesty, this subject already knows. Li Qitian felt much more at ease when he saw that Lu Heng was so polite. He smiled and said, the reason why I granted the marriage between the two families is for the sake of national affairs. Everyone knows about the feud between the Qin Huaiyuan and Pang Shao. One of them is a noble, while the other is a surrendered subject. It can be said that they are both my trusted subordinates. I really don't want them to have internal strife and kill each other. Since ancient times, marriage has been the most effective way to bind the two families. For the sake of the stability of the imperial court, the marriage between the two families is inevitable. Li Qitian's explanation was clear and logical. Although Li Qitian retained his title and dignity as the Son of Heaven, he still felt extremely uncomfortable explaining his actions to a scion of a noble family. Lu Heng only smiled faintly. He didn't notice Li Qitian's expression at all. He said, Is Your Majesty really sure that they don't get along? Li Qitian's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Lu Heng's words unintentionally poked at what Li Qitian was most worried about. Now that he thought about the marriage in the palace hall today, he felt a strange feeling. However, he just couldn't remember what that feeling was. He really did want to bind the two families together to prevent a bloody incident from occurring. If he lost either the Qin Huaiyuan or Pang Shao, it would affect his imperial court. However, whether he made the decision to bind the two families together or whether he had been schemed against was completely different. Chapter 399. Lu Heng's conjecture was completely baseless. It was just something he randomly made up to make Li Qitian feel even worse. Seeing Li Qitian's expression change, Lu Heng's sadness of not being able to marry Qin Yining was slightly alleviated. Li Qitian clearly knew what had happened that day in Ci and Palace, but he still sided with Pang Shao and betrothed Qin Yining to that boorish man. Lu Heng was angry and regretful. He couldn't even sleep. He really didn't think that as the legitimate son of the Lu family, there would be a time when he couldn't get what he wanted. In reality, Lu Heng didn't know why he was so concerned about Qin Yining. Qin Yining clearly didn't treat him well. Not only did he treat him badly, he even schemed against him. But it was her intelligence that made him look at her in a new light. It made him admire her endlessly, and it made him feel a sense of novelty. It was not easy to meet a woman with such outstanding looks and wisdom. If he wanted to casually find a beautiful woman to be his second wife, he wouldn't need to make it public. There were plenty of people in the capital who would be willing to send their unmarried daughters to him. But none of those people could move his heart. The only one who could move his heart was now going to marry someone else. Lu Heng looked at Li Qitian, whose brows were tightly knitted, and felt even more depressed. He only felt a bit better after winning 2 games in a row against the emperor. In the 3rd game, he quietly let Li Qitian win. Li Qitian was originally confused because he couldn't figure out Qin Huaiyuan and Pang Zhao's background. Then he was defeated by Lu Heng twice in a row, so he felt even more depressed. Fortunately, he still won in the end. This made Li Qitian feel much better. The two of them had their own thoughts and were tired from playing chess. Lu Heng took his leave. When she left the palace, she bumped into Anyang eldest princess Li Helan. Li Helan was dressed in a bright red brocade robe. Her hair was combed into a high bun, and the golden phoenix buyao on the bun shone brightly under the warm sunlight, complementing her red palace dress. In this warm weather, it was somewhat dazzling and irritating. In particular, Li Heelan's face was extremely ugly. His eyes were swollen like walnuts. Lu Heng greeted Li Heelan. Lu Heng was such a noble person. Even if he saluted, it wouldn't make people feel that he was inferior to anyone. Instead, it would make people feel that he had a status. The reason why he saluted was because he understood etiquette and was respectful to others. Li Heelan was a little embarrassed. She hoped that no one would notice her swollen eyes. She faintly said, "No need for formalities." Lu Heng smiled and said, "Perhaps eldest princess did not rest well. Your eyes are swollen. You should pay more attention to your body." When Li Heelan heard this, her muscles stiffened. She stared at Lu Heng for a while before confirming that he didn't have any intention of mocking her. "This princess knows." Li Heelan waved her hand with a dark expression. Then, she quickly left with the palace servants. Seeing this, Lu Heng found it funny again. This imperial brother and sister were indeed born as local emperors. They probably didn't know what the real imperial family was like. The Lu family supported their family for the sake of the family's stability and development. However, the imperial family wasn't willing to listen to them anymore. Instead, they wanted to fight back. As the son of the first wife, Lu Heng naturally had to plan for this matter. Forget it. Lu Heng's mind was in a mess. When he thought about how Qin Yining was about to marry Pang Xiao, his heart felt uncomfortable. He didn't have any interest in thinking about the family's business. Qin Yining didn't know that Your Majesty's imperial edict to bestow a marriage would cause so many people to react. At this time, the family was preparing for her hairpin ceremony. Master said that he had already invited the Marquis of Anchang's estate's old madam to be the guest of honor. The old madam has both a son and a daughter. She is deeply in love with the Marquis of Anchang. The two elders are both healthy. This is an old madam with both good fortune and talent. When the Sun clans said this, they felt honored. After all, Qin Huaiyuan had just arrived, but they already had such great influence in the imperial court. Not every family's daughter was able to persuade the Marquis of Anchang to be the guest of honor. As for the assistant, our family has two young ladies. Sister Hui will be the assistant, and Miss 8 will be the assistant. Is that all right? Of course. Miss 8 smiled and nodded. Qin Huining forced a smile and said, "This is our honor." She had already accepted her fate. She couldn't compare with others. Miss 8 was about to become a princess consort, but her future was still uncertain. Qin Huining no longer had the confidence to compete with Qin Yining. Seeing that everything was arranged in an orderly manner, Qin Yining didn't even have a chance to interrupt. She simply didn't say anything and just quietly watched her mother make arrangements for her. This feeling of having a mother to rely on was extremely satisfying. It was something she didn't even dare to think about a year ago. At that time, the Sun clan didn't like her. Now, they were a loving mother and filial daughter. She was going to get married next month. With such a tight schedule, Qin Yining already felt reluctant to leave her family. The hairpin ceremony was scheduled for the next day. Qin Huaiyuan still kept a low profile and didn't invite too many people. However, Yu Qiyan personally brought Li Yanyan and Gu Chang to Qin Yining and gave her a phoenix hairpin decorated with jade and gold. Yu Qiyan became even thinner, and the white hair on his temples also increased. His gaze became distant as he watched Qin Yining tie his hair into a hairpin. He didn't stay in the family Qin for long and left after watching the ceremony. Qin Huaiyuan personally saw him out the door. Before he left, Yu Qiyan turned around to look at the courtyard. Unexpectedly, Qin Yining also turned around to look at him. Her long black hair looked glossy under the sunlight. She wore the phoenix hairpin decorated with jade and gold that he gave her. The two of them looked at each other. She smiled slightly, and the dimples on her cheeks were faintly discernible. She was so beautiful that she looked like a painting. Yuchi Yan's eyes were burning, and the corners of his lips were trembling. He stiffly turned around and strode away. He was in such a sorry state that it seemed like someone was chasing after him. Li Yanyan and Gu Chang both saw Yuchi Yan's sorry state, and their hearts ached. As usual, Qin Huaiyuan treated Yuchi Yan with courtesy and respect. He directly escorted him to the carriage and followed the carriage to the corner of the street. After Qin Yining performed the hairpin ceremony, the elders of the family began to contact the Prince Zhongshuan's residence to discuss the details of the wedding. Qin Yining was kept in his room to embroider pillows. 3 days passed like this. Just as the wedding preparations were in full swing, an unexpected guest suddenly came to the family Qin. Lord Qin. Yuchi Yan's personal eunuch, Little Lu, fell to his knees when he saw Qin Huaiyuan and repeatedly kowtowed. Please help me, Lord Qin, save the royal prince. I beg you. Eunuch Lu, please get up. What's going on? Qin Huaiyuan helped Little Lu up with both hands. Chapter 400. Eunuch Lu, please get up first. Qin Huaiyuan politely helped Little Lu up with both hands and had him sit down on the round-backed chair next to him. He then sat down across from Little Lu. Qin Huaiyuan lowered his eyes. His expression was still calm, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Little Lu was so nervous that he couldn't sit still. Before long, his forehead was covered in sweat. He stood up and said, Lord Qin, you are Wang Ye's teacher and the person Wang Yi trusts the most. Among the people who came to Dian, you are the one with the highest status. If you say something, your majesty will have to give you some face. Right now, you are the only one who can save Wang Ye's life. Qin Huaiyuan smiled and didn't deny Little Lu's words. He only said, based on the situation at that time, Wang Ye's life might not be in danger if he entered the palace. He probably had something he wanted Wang Yi and the princess consort to do, so he left them behind. Qin Huaiyuan actually had a lot of guesses in his heart. He suspected that Li Qitian was here because of the treasure. In the past, when Li Qitian investigated the Yuchi Yan, he arranged for people to investigate the Yuchi Yan. This time, he was able to get the Yuchi Yan into the palace because there was an important clue to the Emperor Emeritus's treasure. Although the Yuchi Yan was the ruler of a fallen country, he was still the last emperor of Dian. Li Qitian would definitely think that the Yuchi Yan knew something that others didn't. Although de Zhou's government looked glamorous on the surface, the state treasury was actually very tight. Although he wasn't in charge of the Ministry of Revenue's finances, according to his observations, de Zhou's money was barely enough to make ends meet. Although they had the financial support of the Lu family, there was no such thing as a free lunch in the sky. If they wanted the Lu family's support, they would have to pay a corresponding price. Therefore, Li Qitian was determined to get the treasure left behind by the Emperor Emeritus. Li Qitian had such intentions. If he planted a seed of doubt in the Yuchi Yan, things would be difficult in the future. Qin Huaiyuan's mind was very agile. He thought a lot in just a few breaths. Little Lu, I understand the situation. I will do my best to think of a way to save the prince. You should return to the residence and wait for news. When Little Lu heard this, he looked uneasily at Qin Huaiyuan. He was afraid that Qin Huaiyuan was just coaxing him. She was afraid that he would continue to pester her, so she sent him away first. However, he was only a eunuch. In the Great Zhou, there was no place for him to speak, nor did he have the confidence to question the Great Zhou. This was because he had no other choice but to believe in Qin Huaiyuan. To you, I everything. Little Lu knelt on the ground and respectfully kowtowed 3 times to Qin Huayuan. Lord Qin, good people will be rewarded. You didn't forget the prince and didn't betray him. Your family will be blessed. Qin Huayuan was amused by Little Lu. I know your intentions. You can go back. Yes, then this servant will take his leave. Little Lu bowed again and reluctantly left the family Qin. Once Little Lu left, the relaxed expression on Qin Huayuan's face disappeared without a trace. He sat upright on the round-backed chair and tapped the lid of the bowl with his right index finger. He didn't know what to do about this matter. When Qin Yining came in, she saw her father's worried expression. She gently placed a bowl of white fungus lotus seed soup beside Qin Huayuan's hand and said with a smile, "Father, why don't you rest for a while?" Qin Huayuan snapped out of his daze and looked at Qin Yining. He laughed and said, "I was just in a daze. What's there to rest for?" "Father, you don't want to talk about it now. Is it because the matter is very difficult?" Qin Huayuan knew that his daughter wasn't easy to coax. Moreover, this matter would affect the future of the clan and her. Qin Huayuan explained in detail how Yu Qiyan, Li Yanyan, and Gu Chang had been invited into the palace and never came out again. Finally, he said, "Sister Yi, you're about to get married. If I get involved in this matter, it will inevitably cause other problems. I'm afraid of delaying your marriage." Qin Yining finally understood and asked with a smile, "Father, according to what you're saying, shouldn't you be concerned about the safety of the county king of Yan's life? After all, we're master and servant, teacher and student. I don't think I have the heart of stone to watch him die." "That's right," Qin Yining said with a smile, "Father, you just need to do as you wish. There's no need to think so much. Now that my marriage with Pang Zhishi has been decreed by the emperor, it's a done deal. I'm not afraid of trouble, and I'm not afraid of facing trouble together with you. Why are you still hesitating?" When Qin Huayuan heard this, he smiled with relief. His daughter really took after him. She was carefree and cheerful and didn't have any dirty thoughts. She was a magnanimous and good child. Seeing that Qin Huayuan didn't say anything, Qin Yining assumed that he still hadn't thought things through. He said, "Father, just do what you want to do. Just like what you advised me to do last time, I trust you. You're smart and you know how to judge the situation. I know you'll do things appropriately. After all, we're all Dayan people. The Yu Qiyan have always treated you with respect. If we ignore Little Lu's request and stand by and do nothing, not only will your conscience be affected, but others will also think that we're too heartless." Qin Huayuan smiled and said, "I understand. I'll take care of this matter. You just need to be at ease and prepare for your marriage." "Yes, with Father's help, we're halfway done." Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan chatted for a while longer before returning to their rooms and continuing with what they were doing. The next day, Qin Huayuan went to court as usual. Qin Yining didn't pay much attention to it. Who would have thought that once Qin Huayuan entered the palace, he didn't return home that day. Instead, his personal attendant came to the old madam with a worried expression. He said that Your Majesty has something important to discuss with Darren. Darren told this lowly one to return home and report to Darren so that the old madam doesn't need to worry. Qin Huayuan was an important official in the imperial court. It was common for him to be asked to stay, so the whole family didn't take it to heart. However, this indifference only lasted for 2 days. Qin Huayuan had already stayed in the palace for 2 nights, but he still hadn't returned. His personal attendant went to ask around, but he couldn't find any information. "What should we do? What should we do?" The old madam was so anxious that she started crying. "What if Your Majesty gets angry and injures Brother Meng? What should we do? Those people in the palace have plenty of ways to quietly deal with people. When the old madam started crying, the whole family became anxious. Han's second young mistress was originally about to give birth. Now that she was emotional and frightened, she started to act up. Han's second young mistress went to the delivery room to give birth. The Sun clan and second old mistress went to help. At this time, the old madam was also pacing back and forth like an ant on a hot pan. She was worried about Han's second young mistress and even more worried about Qin Huayuan. Qin Yining, eighth young mistress, and Qin Huaying stayed by the old madam's side to accompany her. The next morning, Han's second young mistress gave birth to a 6-gene boy. Qin Han was so happy that he jumped 3 feet high. However, Qin Huayuan still didn't return home. Qin Yining was really anxious this time. Just as she was thinking of countermeasures in her room, Bing Tang came in. Chapter 401. Old Master Gu. Which old Master Gu are you talking about? Qin Yining stood up in confusion. Bing Tang said, the one who came to Dezhou with us, old Master Gu Shixiang. His granddaughter, Gu Chang, is the concubine of the county king of Yan. I understand. Qin Yining couldn't help but frown as he paced back and forth. She had no contact with Gu Shixiang, and she also knew that her father had no interaction with him. Why would this person suddenly come to visit? This must have something to do with what happened in the palace recently. Gu Shixiang was the grand tutor when the retired emperor was still a prince. Although the retired emperor was muddle-headed and incompetent, he had always respected Gu Shixiang. It could be said that Gu Shixiang was the person the retired emperor trusted the most. Now that this person suddenly came, Qin Yining couldn't help but think about it. Bing Tang, go to the front hall first and carefully entertain old Master Gu. I will immediately come after I change. Yes. Bing Tang nodded and quickly walked out the door. Qin Yining changed his clothes and was about to go out when he saw Ji Yun coming in, panting. Qin Yining, Xian Yun, and Qiu Lu, who were helping her comb her hair, were all shocked. What's wrong? Qin Yining sat in front of the dressing table and turned to look at her. Ji Yun took 2 deep breaths and quickly said in a low voice, Miss, this servant just came back from outside. The people from the palace came and invited Madame Chow and all the silver-masked secret agents into the palace. Also, there is a rumor in the capital. Qin Yining looked at Ji Yun in shock. Ji Yun continued, many people outside are saying that the retired emperor of Dayan's treasure has been found. But the treasure is empty. What? Qin Yining heard this and didn't know what to say for a moment. Before Great Yan was forced to flee from the desperate situation, the retired emperor had spent a great deal of effort to amass a huge amount of wealth. Everyone knew that the retired emperor must be planning to save the money so that he could make a comeback in the future. How could such a selfish person leave an empty treasure trove for himself? Ji Yun said, it's true. The news has spread everywhere. It said that the people your majesty sent to Dayan's old capital found an empty treasure trove. Qin Yining nodded. She now understood why Li Qitian had suddenly detained Yu Qiyan, Li Yanyan, and Gu Chang in the palace. Li Qitian is indeed astute. First, he wanted to interrogate the Yu Qiyan about the whereabouts of the real treasure. Second, he wanted to use the Yu Qiyan as a hostage. Even if the Yu Qiyan didn't know the whereabouts of the treasure, he could prevent them from acting rashly. After all, the Dayan's treasure was to be left for the Yan dynasty's royal bloodline. Thirdly, and also the most important point. Since the Yu Qiyan had been captured, there would naturally be people who cared about him who would take action. Li Qitian only needed to observe carefully to determine who had something to do with the whereabouts of the treasure. Therefore, in Li Qitian's eyes, Gu Shixiang, who suddenly appeared outside, must be the representative of, there must be something fishy when there is something unusual. Qin Yining suddenly felt that the situation was quite troublesome. As an old official, old Master Gu was definitely not a stupid person. At this juncture, he came to family Qin and even asked to meet her. Was it unintentional or intentional? No matter what he said, this matter was suspicious in the eyes of the emperor. Qin Yining was very suspicious that old Master Gu's actions were to drag down the family Qin, who had been doing well in Dezhou. "Miss, what should we do now?" Seeing Qin Yining's serious expression, the maidservants were a little nervous. However, they had been through a lot with Qin Yining. Although they were nervous, they were not afraid. Qin Yining smiled at them reassuringly and said, "Don't worry, I have my own plans. Xianyun, Qiu Lu, the two of you stay in the room. Ji Yun, accompany me to meet old Master Gu." "Yes, Mississippi," the maidservants responded in unison. Ji Yun followed Qin Yining to the front hall of the main courtyard. Gu Shixiang was over 70 years old. His hair and beard were all white, and he had a lean figure. Dressed in a simple, dark blue satin robe, he looked like an old teacher. Qin Yining quickly sized him up and bowed respectfully. "Old Master Gu, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. Please forgive me for my lack of decorum." Gu Shixiang smiled slightly and stood up to cup his hands in return. "Miss Qin, there's no need to be so formal. This old man has taken the liberty to disturb you." Qin Yining did not expect him to be so polite, so he immediately had some ideas. "Old Master Gu, please take a seat." "Please." The two of them exchanged some pleasantries. Qin Yining insisted on sitting on the lower seat and only half of it. He expressed his etiquette incisively and vividly, which made Gu Shixiang feel very comfortable. "May I know why old Master Gu has come to visit me? I don't dare to accept your invitation. This old man has disturbed you today because I have good news to tell Miss Qin." When Qin Yining heard this, he only smiled calmly and asked, "May I know what good news old Master Gu is referring to?" Gu Shixiang stroked his snow-white beard and smiled extremely kindly. "Miss Qin should have already heard about it. The news has already spread throughout the capital. The person your majesty sent to search for the treasure in Dian has returned with news that the treasure was found, but it was empty." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Yes, I have heard about it. Miss Qin, what do you think about this matter?" Gu Shixiang asked. Qin Yining looked at Gu Shixiang's aged eyes, which were filled with hidden brilliance, and smiled sweetly. "I don't have any thoughts. I'm just a girl who stays in the boudoir and does needlework every day until I get married. Why would I care about such things? These are all men's affairs and have nothing to do with a girl like me." Gu Shixiang was obviously stunned. Looking at Qin Yining's exceptionally pure and kind smile, Gu Shixiang seriously sized up the girl in front of him for the first time. She had a beautiful face that was blushed by the heavens, and she also had an intelligent mind that was favored by the heavens. When talking to her, Gu Shixiang felt as if he was talking to a wily old fox who had been in the imperial court for decades, and not a 16-year-old girl who had yet to be married. She was indeed the daughter of a wise Panin. She really had her father's style. Gu Shixiang stroked his beard and smiled. "Miss Qin, you don't have to beat around the bush with this old man. This old man knows that you're a smart child. When we were in Dian, this old man already knew about your intelligence. This old man came here today with sincerity, so I naturally hope that Miss Qin will treat me with sincerity." Without waiting for Qin Yining to reply, Gu Shixiang continued, "The treasure that your majesty found was indeed empty, but the rumors outside aren't all true. There are some details that outsiders don't know. There was no treasure in the treasure, only a letter." "A letter?" "Yes, a letter. A letter that this old man wrote to the retired emperor." Gu Shixiang's gaze was distant. After a while, he said, this old man was tasked by the retired emperor to build an underground palace and transport the hidden treasure. The retired emperor had long wanted to escape and establish his own faction, which was why he passed the throne to the county king of Yen. However, deep down, this old man disapproved of the retired emperor's actions. Back then, this old man transported the treasure to a secret location, and the retired emperor knew the location of the treasure. This old man only left a letter for him, telling him that he really didn't have the right and didn't deserve such a huge amount of wealth. This wealth was to be left for the new emperor to revive the Dian dynasty. Unfortunately, this old man was too naive. After the new emperor ascended the throne, the Dian dynasty was destroyed, and the real treasure became a secret that this old man couldn't reveal. Qin Yining listened quietly to Gu Shixiang, then smiled and said, I understand what old Master Gu is trying to say. But why are you telling me all this? Miss Qin, this old man is here to make a deal with you. A deal? Yes. Now that the county king of Yen has been invited into the palace by your majesty and his fate is unknown, this old man can tell you the real location of the treasure. I only ask that you don't give this huge amount of wealth to Li Qitian, and that you rescue the county king of Yen and his family safely. As long as you can do this, the treasure will belong to you alone. When Gu Shixiang spoke frankly, he had been carefully observing Qin Yining's expression. He wanted to find clues from her expression. However, Qin Yining appeared to be too calm. Even such a huge amount of wealth did not make her frown. This young woman appreciates your kindness, old Master Gu. However, I'm just a weak woman, and it's enough for me to have a husband. As for the treasure or whatever, I have no interest in those things, and I don't want to get involved in the complicated politics of the imperial court. Please understand, old Master Gu. Qin Yining's words caused Gu Shixiang's expression to change drastically. Since ancient times, wealth had moved people's hearts. Before he came, he had been full of confidence. He did not believe that there would be anyone in this world who would not be moved by money. Gu Shixiang's tone was somewhat anxious. Miss Qin, please don't reject me so quickly. As far as I know, you're going to marry Prince Zhongshuan soon. Prince Zhongshuan's achievements are so great that Li Qitian has always been wary of him. It's almost inevitable that there will be great chaos in the future. If there comes a day when the birds are killed and the bow is put to rest, won't this money help you a bit more? Gu Shixiang was being very reserved with his words. The treasure was a huge sum. Didn't you see how your majesty in Dezhou risked his life to find it? Anyone who obtained this treasure would have an inexhaustible amount of wealth. Perhaps they could even hide it from future generations. Qin Yining was a woman. She was a woman who was going to marry Pang Xiao, who might be in danger. Before Gu Shixiang came, he was already thinking about how Qin Yining would react. However, he never expected that Qin Yining would not waver in the face of such a huge amount of wealth. Gu Shixiang had been in the imperial court for many years. His ability to observe people's expressions had reached the point of perfection. How could he not see that Qin Yining's unwavering attitude was not an act? She was serious. There was actually someone in this world who did not love wealth. Miss Qin, you and I are both Dian people. Since this old man has come to visit you, I have come with sincerity. This old man will not speak any empty words in front of you. This old man will definitely not give this treasure to the people of Dezhou. In the past, the retired emperor was muddle-headed and incompetent. This old man has seen it all with my own eyes. I also know that he does not deserve this treasure. This old man cannot help the county king of Yen in any way, nor can I give him the treasure. Furthermore, the county king of Yen is not someone who is particularly sensitive when it comes to politics. However, this old man cannot let anything happen to the county king of Yen, no matter what. Chapter 402. Old Master Gu's loyalty is truly admirable. Qin Yining smiled and praised, "Old Master Gu, it's rare to see someone like you who doesn't forget your old master and cares about your old relationship at the expense of your own safety. You're flattering me. I don't have much to look forward to in my official career. I'm just a dying old man. What I really admire is your father, Minister Qin. Minister Qin has not returned since he entered the palace because of the County Prince of Yen." Gu Shixiang's face was also full of admiration. However, Qin Yining knew very well that Gu Shixiang was threatening her. Because even if he didn't save the County Prince of Yen, Qin Yining wouldn't ignore Qin Huayuan's safety. At this moment, Qin Yining really felt that these people who had climbed through the ranks of the imperial court were too cunning. By now, Li Qitian must have set his eyes on the family Qin. Perhaps he already knew that Gu Shixiang had come to the family Qin. Qin Yining also knew that Gu Shixiang was smart enough not to guess that Your Majesty was watching his every move. But he did it on purpose and even made such a request. It was obvious that he wanted to drag the family Qin down with him. Qin Yining couldn't help but narrow her eyes and think. Wasn't Gu Shixiang afraid that she would spread the news that he knew the whereabouts of the treasure? Was he really willing to give such a large sum of money to her for free? Wasn't he afraid that she would give the treasure to Pang Shao directly when she found it in the future? Qin Yining didn't believe that Gu Shixiang was sincere when he said that he would give the treasure to her to protect Pang Shao. But on second thought, Qin Yining somewhat understood. First of all, if she didn't agree to help, Gu Shixiang would naturally not tell her the whereabouts of the treasure. Then, only Gu Shixiang would know where the treasure was. Once she leaked the secret, Gu Shixiang would just die. Dying with the treasure would not benefit others. Therefore, Gu Shixiang was not afraid of leaks at all. Secondly, if she were to agree to help and rescue the County King of Yen, Gu Shixiang would probably find a way to force her to spit out the treasure. He might even find a way to ruin her marriage with Pang Shao and betroth her to the County King of Yen. If that were to happen, the treasure would become her dowry. The County King of Yen would not be at a disadvantage either. In the end, if she were to agree to help, rescue the County King of Yen, and give the treasure to Pang Shao, Gu Shixiang would have nothing to fear. He could go to Li Qitian to sow discord and make Li Qitian more suspicious of Pang Shao, who had financial resources. The Dezhou imperial court was thrown into chaos. Therefore, after Qin Yining analyzed the situation for a while, he realized that Gu Shixiang had made the right move. Even if she refused now, none of the above three situations would happen. Gu Shixiang's arrival had already planted the seed of suspicion. As expected of an old official, his calculations were flawless. Qin Yining analyzed everything in the span of a breath. She was silent for a long time before speaking slowly. "Old Master Gu, this is a serious matter. My father is not at home. Please allow me to think about it." Hearing this, Gu Shixiang looked at Qin Yining's beautiful face and felt a little disappointed. It seemed that a woman would be a woman after all. He should not have expected a woman to be as bold and decisive as a man. Forget it. I really have no other choice at the moment. Please think about it carefully, Miss Qin. I will wait for your good news. Qin Yining smiled and nodded at his words. Seeing that he was done talking, Gu Shixiang took his leave. Qin Yining escorted him to the front of the courtyard before turning around. In any case, Gu Shixiang's arrival could not be hidden from Li Qitian. Moreover, with Gu Shixiang's former status in the Dian imperial court, Qin Huayuan was not at home, and she was receiving guests on behalf of her father. If she impolitely escorted him out, people would suspect that she had a guilty conscience. However, Qin Yining did not feel guilty at all. Old Master Gu was so shrewd and scheming. He wanted to drag the family Qin into this mess. Moreover, he did not leave any loopholes. She could not think of a way to deal with him. Qin Yining knew that she had to think of a solution quickly. Otherwise, once this news reached Your Majesty's ears, she would be the next person to be summoned to the palace. She was preparing to marry Pang Xiao. How could she allow herself to be defeated over such a matter? Qin Yining pursed her lips and sat cross-legged on the warm kong by the window. She hugged the soft light purple satin pillow and fell into deep thought. Ji Yun, who had been listening to them for a long time, also felt that this matter was very troublesome. Seeing Qin Yining like this, Ji Yun said in a low voice, "Miss, old master is not at home now, and this matter is not good to be publicized. Why don't you ask Wang Yi? Wang Yi will definitely be able to think of a suitable way to help Mississippi." Qin Yining knew Ji Yun's good intentions. She smiled and said, "What you said makes sense. I also believe that Wang Yi will be able to help me think of a way. However, Wang Ye's identity is special, and the current situation is sensitive. If I ask him, won't I drag him into this mess? Miss, Wang Yi won't mind. Even if he doesn't mind helping me solve this problem, I don't want to add to his troubles." Qin Yining paced back and forth with her hands behind her back. After thinking for 2 hours, she finally came up with a plan. She turned around and ordered with bright eyes, "Ji Yun, help me find a simple wooden box and some nails. Bing Tang, help me grind the ink. Oh right, and cinnabar." "Yes." Seeing Qin Yining like this, everyone knew that she had a plan. They hurriedly went to prepare it. After Qin Yining finished preparing everything, she said, "Quickly go to the Gu family and send an invitation. Tell them that I've thought it through and have an urgent matter to ask old Master Gu to come over." Ji Yun quickly nodded and rushed out. Gu Shixiang was waiting at home on pins and needles when news came from outside that the family Qin servant wanted to see him. Gu Shixiang's face lit up. He hurriedly went out to see Ji Yun. When he learned that Qin Yining wanted to see him, he didn't care about etiquette and hurriedly ordered someone to prepare a car and rushed to the family Qin. This time, Qin Yining welcomed Gu Shixiang at the main entrance and politely led him to the front hall. After serving tea, Qin Yining said apologetically, "Old Master Gu, I'm afraid I can't fulfill your request." Gu Shixiang came full of hope. When he heard this, he was in disbelief. His beard trembled as he asked, why do you say that?" Qin Yining said, "Old Master Gu, a new emperor brings in new officials. Ever since I came to Dezhou, I've only been loyal to Your Majesty. Although I have feelings for Your Majesty, I can't betray my loyalty to Your Majesty. Even if you tell me the whereabouts of the treasure, I'll definitely turn around and tell Your Majesty. You don't forget that you're a Dayan." Qin Yining smiled. "Dayan doesn't exist anymore. We're in Dezhou now." Chapter 403. Qin Yining smiled faintly inside. "I think Your Majesty values Wang Yi a lot. Wang Yi is the founding minister of the country and has a lot of prestige in the military. Your Majesty wouldn't do anything to Wang Yi for the sake of his own reputation. Old Master Gu, you worry too much." Gu Shixiang was so angry that he felt like he was suffocating in his chest. He felt like a scholar meeting a soldier. Everyone said that the daughter of Qin Huayuan was intelligent and courageous, and that she had a unique vision for court affairs. Now, it seemed like the rumors outside weren't true. It was simply to flatter Qin Huayuan that people had spread those rumors. Qin Yining was just an ordinary ignorant woman. She couldn't even see through such a dangerous situation. Gu Shixiang analyzed the situation for Qin Yining with a serious expression. "Miss Qin, don't be too naive. Your Majesty's fear of Prince Zhongshuan is very obvious. It's just that you don't pay much attention to court affairs, so you can't see it clearly. If this huge sum of money were in the hands of others, I would feel that it would be a waste. But if it's in your hands, it will help Prince Zhongshuan in the future. This can be considered a treasure sword for a hero. Moreover, don't forget that even if your majesty grants the marriage, the matter of Minister Qin killing Prince Zhongshuan and his father still exists. With this treasure, won't you be able to stand up more after marrying into the Qin family? Gu Shixiang's analysis was clear and logical. Every word he said was in consideration of Qin Yining's future. Qin Yining felt that Gu Shixiang was really an expert at grasping people's hearts. If she was an ordinary woman, she might have already believed him. She had always believed that climbing up the ranks in court depended on one's own ability. It was normal for there to be conspiracies and overt plots. But in order to achieve his own goals, Gu Shixiang would rather drag an innocent family Qin into the mess and drag a woman into the mess. Qin Yining felt that this kind of behavior was shameful even if it came from a loyal country. You're right. I'm sorry to disappoint you, old Master Gu. I'm really unable to help you. Qin Yining bowed and apologized. Gu Shixiang's old eyes suddenly dimmed when they met Qin Yining's resolute gaze. At this moment, Gu Shixiang truly felt despair. Every single one of them only cared about their own safety, and never considered whether Great Yan dynasty could be restored to its former glory. Was he going to watch Li Qitian destroy the only legitimate Yuqi Yan bloodline? Gu Shixiang leaned back in his chair and shook his head in exasperation, mumbling, "If you don't help me, then there's really no one else who can help me save the county king of Yan." Qin Yining couldn't bear to see an old man like Gu Shixiang so helpless. He pursed his lips and thought for a moment before saying, "Old Master Gu, don't worry. Please listen to me." Gu Shixiang raised his eyes and looked at Qin Yining. Qin Yining said, "You don't have to come to me. I'm just a woman in my own home. The only person I can rely on is my father. My father is not at home, and my future husband's family is ambiguous about their attitude toward me. Who else can I ask for help? I think it's better for you to seek help from those who have the ability to do so. Think about it. Who else in the capital city has the ability to go up against your majesty?" Gu Shixiang sat up straight and lowered his eyes to think. He suddenly realized something and said, "You mean the Lu family?" Qin Yining smiled and said nothing. Gu Shixiang felt as if the dead end in front of him had been pushed aside, revealing a bright path to the distance. The Lu family is indeed not bad. There was no one else in the capital city who could stand up to Li Qitian. The Lu family's power was not to be underestimated. Gu Shixiang's mind was clear. However, it didn't take long before he shook his head helplessly and said, "But what if the Lu family's character is not good enough? What if they take the treasure for themselves and refuse to help me save the county king of Yan? What should I do then?" Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh and said, "Old Master Gu, you are too involved to see clearly. When you came to me, weren't you afraid that I would take the treasure for myself and refuse to help?" Gu Shixiang was enlightened by his words. That was right. Be it the Lu family or Qin Yining, there was a 50% chance that they would take the treasure for themselves and refuse to help. In that case, what was the difference between begging the Lu family and begging Qin Yining? No matter how bad the Lu family was, they could still make their own decisions. Qin Yining was a woman. Even if she took the treasure, she would still have to ask Pang Xiao for help. In comparison, it was more appropriate to ask the Lu family for help. What you said makes sense. However, I have never had any dealings with the Lu family. I really have no one to ask for help from. How could the Lu family possibly meet me and trust me so easily? Qin Yining looked at Gu Shixiang. After a long while, she seemed to have made up her mind and said, "We are both dying. At this point, I have no choice but to take action. All right. Ji Yun." Qin Yining turned around and instructed Ji Yun, "Go and bring me the box that I placed at the bottom of the cabinet." Ji Yun bowed and left. Not long after, she returned with the box that Qin Yining had prepared. Qin Yining placed the box on the square table and pushed it to Gu Shixiang's side. "Old Master Gu, to tell you the truth, I have some ties with the second master of the Lu family, Lu Heng. Bring this token to second master Lu. He will definitely be willing to help you when he sees it." Gu Shixiang took the box and found that it was nailed shut. It could not be opened. Gu Shixiang asked, "What's in this box?" "Old Master Gu, please don't open it yourself. Give this box to second master Lu and he will be able to open it. Once he sees the token, he will naturally help you. As a weak woman, I can only help you up to this point." Hearing this, Gu Shixiang had no choice but to accept the box and thank Qin Yining. Then, he hurriedly returned to the Gu residence. The Gu residence was very far from the county king of Yan's residence. It was only a small courtyard with 2 entrances. This was a gift from Li Qitian, who saw that Gu Shixiang was a senior official who had served 3 Dayan emperors, to show his benevolence. As soon as he entered the residence, Gu Shixiang hurriedly called for someone. "Quickly go and find out where Lu Heng and second master Lu are now." The personal attendant immediately left to carry out the order. Not long after, he returned to report, "Old Master, the Minister of War went to the 3,000 barracks for an inspection today." Second Master Lu followed Minister Qing to the 3,000 barracks outpost outside the city. Gu Shixiang thought for a moment, then handed the box to the personal attendant. "Take this token and go to the 3,000 barracks immediately. Ask to see Lu Heng. Tell him that I have something important to discuss with him." "Yes, sir." The personal attendant bowed solemnly and immediately left. Unexpectedly, the personal attendant had only taken a few steps when Gu Shixiang called out to him again. "No, it's better if I go personally to show my sincerity. If you go, you don't have enough authority. Prepare the carriage for me." Seeing how serious Gu Shixiang was, the personal attendant immediately went to prepare the carriage. In less than 10 minutes, Gu Shixiang was already in the speeding carriage with the token in his arms. He was worried about the county king of Yan and was very anxious. Chapter 404. Gu Shixiang couldn't understand why Qin Yining would be so kind as to help him. Why would she take the risk and recommend him to the second master of the Lu family? Could it really be because they were all citizens of Great Yan dynasty? But if this woman had such a patriotic heart from the start, she would have agreed to help him long ago. She wouldn't have waited until now. Qin Yining's behavior was not consistent from the beginning to the end. Gu Shixiang's blood turned cold as he thought of this. He quickly ordered the coachman, "Stop the carriage." The coachman was startled by Gu Shixiang's hoarse and sharp voice and quickly stopped the carriage. Gu Shixiang got off the carriage clumsily. He took out a dagger and began to pry open the nailed box under the light of the setting sun. After expending a tremendous amount of effort, he finally pried open the box and found that there was a piece of paper lying inside. Gu Shixiang felt more and more strange. He picked up the paper and took a closer look. His heart skipped a beat. It was a hand-drawn map. The mountains, rivers, forests, and trees were clearly marked. On the top right of the map, there was a circle drawn with a cinnabar pen. What kind of map was this? Gu Shixiang carefully looked at the markings beside the mountains and rivers to see if he could find a place he was familiar with. But at this moment, he suddenly heard a flurry of horse hooves coming from the direction of the 3,000 battalion. Gu Shixiang was shocked. He looked in that direction with a serious expression. Gu Shixiang saw a middle-aged man wearing the uniform of a military officer. His face was gloomy as he led 30 to 40 cavalrymen in a gallop. Before Gu Shixiang could react, the middle-aged man raised his hand and ordered his men to surround Gu Shixiang and his carriage. Gu Shixiang's heart beat faster and faster, but he still looked calm. "Who are you people? What do you want?" The military leader didn't answer. He only said, "Give me the thing in your hand." Gu Shixiang frowned. "Why should I give it to you?" The military leader pulled out a sword from his waist and shouted, "Give it to me! Give it to me!" The cavalrymen all pulled out their swords. Under the dim light, the swords shone like snow. Gu Shixiang was so scared that his legs began to tremble. Gu Shixiang frowned and asked, "Who are you? If the person is not right, I will not hand it over so easily. I see that you are soldiers and this place is the closest to the 3000 battalion. Could it be that you are from the 3000 battalion? Or are you Minister Chang's men? Cut the crap. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Seeing this person's reaction, Gu Shixiang understood that these people were indeed Minister Chang's people. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, and said, "If you are Minister Chang's people, then there is no need to fight over this item. Bring me to Minister Chang and Second Master Lu, and I will naturally present this item to Minister Chang with both hands." The leader of the group was stunned. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the sound of horse hooves coming from the direction of the capital. From the sound of it, there were at least 100 people, which was more than the number of people on their side. Naturally, Gu Shixiang heard it too. At this point, Gu Shixiang had even more guesses in his heart. The group of people from the capital quickly closed in and formed another encirclement outside the encirclement. The leading officer shouted, "Is Gu Shixiang, Old Master Gu here? Your Majesty has decreed that Old Master Gu is to enter the palace to see him." The officer who had blocked the way earlier frowned and bent over, snatching the wooden box from Gu Shixiang's hands along with the map of an unknown place. Gu Shixiang was stunned and didn't even have time to resist. He could only watch as the items were taken away. "Is Old Master Gu here?" The officer who came later asked again. Gu Shixiang said in a hoarse voice, "I am here. Out of the way, out of the way." The horse hooves were in a mess, and the people were noisy. It seemed that the people who came later had separated the crowd. When the group of people who came first saw this, they all retreated and left the encirclement. They simply left Gu Shixiang to the 100 people who came later and rode away. How could Gu Shixiang not understand at this time? This was the first time in his life that he had fallen so hard. And it was at the hands of a little girl. He was the clearest about his own calculations. He also knew that his public act of going to the Guqin would attract Your Majesty's attention. But after Qin Yining's words, he only wanted to bring the token to Lu Heng and forgot about the surveillance. Now, it seemed that the situation in the capital was tense. Your Majesty's group was not the only ones who were monitoring the family Qin. The group who had just snatched his token was under the jurisdiction of the Minister of War and should be from the Lu family. And those who came later could be considered polite were Your Majesty's trusted aides. They knew that he had brought the token to the 3000 battalion and specially came to intercept him. Now, everyone should be sure that the map in the box was the treasure map. Even if he, Gu Shixiang, were to say that it was not a treasure map in the future, no one would believe him. But why would he tell them the real location of the treasure? "Old Master Gu, please follow us to the palace to meet His Majesty," the general said in an imposing manner. Gu Shixiang looked like he was scared out of his wits. He trembled as he climbed into the carriage. The group of people quickly rushed in the direction of the imperial palace. Li Qitian had already received news from his spy that Gu Shixiang had gone to Qin's mansion for the second time to find Qin Yining. When he left Qin's mansion for the second time, Gu Shixiang brought something home and rushed to the 3000 battalion. Li Qitian knew that his plan to detain Yu Qiyan and observe the situation had finally worked. Old Master Gu was the imperial tutor of the late Dian Emperor and could be said to be a person of virtue and prestige. Li Qitian had long suspected that Gu Shixiang knew the whereabouts of the treasure. But this old master did not have any other skills except for his ability to play dumb. Today, he finally caught him red-handed and his painstaking efforts were not in vain. "Your Majesty, old Master Gu has arrived," Li Guanwen said in a low voice in front of the imperial study. When Li Qitian heard this, he hurriedly said, "Let him in." "As you wish." Li Guanwen retreated and soon led Gu Shixiang to the front. Gu Shixiang trembled as he bowed deeply to Li Qitian. "This commoner kowtows in salute to your Majesty. May your Majesty live in good health." Li Qitian sat behind the desk and said with a heavy expression, "Old Master Gu, can you explain to me why you rushed out of the city to the 3,000 camp before the curfew?" Gu Shixiang kowtowed in panic and said, this commoner, you're already in front of me and you still don't want to tell me the truth." Li Qitian slammed the table and stood up. Gu Shixiang trembled and tears fell from his eyes. Chapter 405. Li Qitian's face tightened and his hands clenched into fists. He didn't say anything for a long time. The clue to the treasure that he couldn't find was in the hands of the Yu Qiyan's concubine's grandfather. This old thing had been hiding the treasure map all this time. His surrender to De Zhou wasn't sincere. He had been looking for this treasure for a long time. Although he didn't publicize it, it wasn't a secret. Who knew that this old man could keep his composure? If he hadn't detained the Yu Qiyan family in the palace, this old thing definitely wouldn't have handed it over. Li Qitian forced himself to calm down. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Is the treasure map in the hands of the Lu family?" Gu Shixiang was happy to see Li Qitian and the court officials at odds. He wiped his tears with his sleeves and said in a trembling voice, "Yes, it was snatched away by a general. He said he was second Master Lu's man." Li Qitian naturally knew about Lu Heng's connections in the court. Grand Secretary Lu was in charge of the cabinet, and the Lu family was powerful. Even Minister Qing of the Ministry of War had pledged his allegiance to the Lu family. The great Zhou dynasty was in need of silver, but silver was a good thing. Back then, the Lu clan had spent a lot of money to help them attack Beiji. Now that they heard about the treasure, they naturally wanted to find it to make up for their losses. Li Qitian knew that once the treasure map fell into the hands of the Lu family, it would be difficult for him to see it again. "Li Guanwen." Li Qitian's voice was unprecedentedly loud. Li Guanwen, who was guarding the door of the imperial study, rushed in after being yelled at. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty. Immediately send someone to the 3,000 battalion to bring Lu Heng back. We have something important to discuss with him." "Yes." Li Guanwen accepted the order and rushed out with a serious expression. Gu Shixiang, who was kneeling on the ground with his head lowered, sneered in his heart. Lu Heng wasn't stupid. Could it be that she would hand over the treasure map after obtaining it? But now that he thought about it, Qin Yining's scheme was really vicious. Not only did he protect the real treasure, he also diverted the trouble to the east, letting Li Qitian and the aristocratic families fight each other, thus completely removing the blame of the surrendered officials' faction. Most importantly, Qin Yining had made a fool out of him, an old official in the imperial court. If he remembered correctly, Qin Huayuan had been detained by Your Majesty for the past few days. In other words, Qin Yining had done all of this by himself. Gu Shixiang couldn't help but be flabbergasted. He was only 16 years old, and he already had such skills. What would he do in the future? On second thought, if Yu Qiyan could have such a smart woman by his side, it would be a good thing for him. After all, the Yuchi Yen was not good at politics. However, Qin Yining had already been betrothed to Prince Zhongshuan. It was also good that she was betrothed to Prince Zhongshuan. If he had an intelligent wife, he would be able to fight Li Qitian without any worries. Gu Shixiang's mind turned at lightning speed. After thinking through many things, his mood became even better, and his resentment towards Qin Yining's scheme also lessened. Li Qitian, however, was not as calm as Gu Shixiang. He lowered his eyes and pondered. Sometimes he looked at the kneeling Gu Shixiang, and sometimes he looked at the door. After a long time, Li Qitian said, "Old Master Gu, I hope you can repeat the contents of the treasure map for us." Gu Shixiang had expected Li Qitian to ask this question, so he shook his head and said, "Replying to your majesty, this commoner has not seen the treasure map, so I don't know its contents." Li Qitian raised his eyebrows. "Oh. Your majesty, although this commoner is not talented, I used to be the teacher of Dian's retired emperor. Since he arranged for me to do something, I naturally have to do my best. Moreover, I have to obey the imperial edict. This commoner is not qualified to see the treasure map, and I have no interest in the treasure. Naturally, I won't take the initiative to look at it." Li Qitian looked at Gu Shixiang suspiciously. This thin old man's hair and beard were all white, and he had one foot in the grave. Moreover, he had brought his family to Dezhou. If he dared to deceive the emperor, his entire Gu family would be finished. Li Qitian was certain that Gu Shixiang would not lie. It was not easy for a treasure map to appear, but Gu Shixiang did not know its contents, and the treasure map was taken away by his enemy. This was really, Li Qitian took several deep breaths, waiting for Li Guanwen's good news. However, Li Guanwen brought back bad news. "Your Majesty, when this servant arranged for people to arrive at the 3,000 battalion, Second Master Lu had already left." Li Guanwen lowered his head, not daring to look at Li Qitian's expression. He knew that if something went wrong at this moment, he might lose his life. He might even lose his little life. Li Qitian's face darkened. After a long time, he asked, "Where did he go?" "Replying to your Majesty, the 3,000 battalion's people said that Second Master Lu left in the middle of the night with a few of his personal attendants." Li Qitian's hands were tightly clenched. It seemed that the treasure map was real. Otherwise, with Lu Heng's steady personality, with his temperament, how could he leave without any hesitation? Li Qitian was angry and regretful. Why didn't he catch this old man earlier? Why did he have to laugh at him? If he had not indulged him, this old man would not have taken the treasure map to the Lu family in a time of crisis. After searching for so long, he finally saw a glimmer of hope. Now, that hope had been shattered. Gu Shixiang looked at Li Qitian's mournful face. It was even better than eating a bowl of iced sour plum soup during the hottest days of the summer. Li Qitian did not let Gu Shixiang be happy for long. He said, "Old Master Gu, you are an old official of the Dian. Of course, your seniority is indisputable. However, you are old and need to rest. If there is nothing else, it would be better for you to rest in the mansion." He was grounding him. Gu Shixiang smiled nonchalantly and said, "Yes, thank you for your Majesty's concern. This commoner also hopes to be able to stand by your side again." Li Qitian smiled and ordered someone to help Gu Shixiang back to rest. It seemed that the Lu family would go all out now that the treasure map had fallen into their hands. "Li Guanwen, go and invite Minister Lu here. Also, release the Yuchi Yen family of 3 and the family Qin. The family Qin and the Pang family are planning to get married. Don't delay their wedding preparations." Li Qitian's words were too negative. Li Guanwen felt that Your Majesty was not right, but he did not dare to persuade him. He could only say, "Yes, Your Majesty." Then, he cautiously received the order and went to carry it out. Minister Lu quickly entered the palace. Li Qitian hated Minister Lu the most among the few grand secretaries in the imperial cabinet. That was because the leaders of the Lu family were too outstanding and difficult to fool. Minister Lu's words were very important in the imperial cabinet. His words would affect Li Qitian's decisions. Moreover, Minister Lu's actions would affect the direction of the dynasty. What if Li Qitian was careless and caused him to rise up again? The Lu family was not like him. They did not lack money and lived frugally. If the Lu family really wanted to make a move, they did not even need to raise money. Chapter 406. Someone, prepare a seat for Minister Lu, Li Qitian ordered in a deep voice. Li Guanwen immediately nodded and ordered the servants to bring a chair with an official's hat and place it on the seat of honor. Minister Lu was wearing a red official's robe. He lifted the hem of his robe and knelt down shakily. Thank you for your Majesty's kindness. Li Qitian was furious when he saw the old man's humble and respectful attitude. He was obviously not loyal to the emperor, but he still acted like this. Wasn't he deceiving the emperor? You're an old official and my right-hand man. Back then, in order to end the war as soon as possible, for the sake of the world, the Lu family lent a helping hand. I've always been grateful. How can there not be a seat for Minister Lu in front of me? Li Qitian smiled wholeheartedly and was very amiable. Minister Lu, who had been in office for many years, was so touched that his thin body and beard trembled together. He bowed emotionally and said, I'm willing to go through fire and water for your Majesty to repay your Majesty's kindness. He was about to kneel down again. Li Qitian gave him a look and Li Guanwen immediately went forward to help Minister Lu up. Li Qitian said, Why aren't you helping Minister Lu to his seat? Li Guanwen smiled and said, Please take a seat, Senior. Your Majesty cares about me the most. Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty. Minister Lu was so grateful that he almost cried and sat down on the chair. Li Qitian rubbed his temples tiredly when Minister Lu lowered his head. When Minister Lu looked up, Li Qitian was still the same as usual. Minister Lu, do you know why I summoned you today? Minister Lu nodded and said sincerely, Your Majesty must have summoned you because of the drought in the south. Your Majesty doesn't have to worry. Your Majesty is the true Son of Heaven and is protected by the heavens. Ever since Dian surrendered and the country returned to Dezhou, the drought there has been alleviated. Your Majesty is so blessed that he can bring benefits to the people. Grand Secretary Lu was really old, but when he spoke, he tried his best to speak loudly. His body was trembling, which made Li Guanwen tremble with fear. He was afraid that the old man would speak too loudly and not be able to catch his breath. If something happened to him in the imperial study, how could he explain it to the Lu family? However, Cabinet Secretary Lu's words were like a bucket of oil to Li Qitian, who was filled with anger. Li Qitian clenched his teeth to prevent his anger from spitting out. What a loyal and patriotic official. If he was so loyal, why did he allow his grandson to do such a thing? If it was someone else, he would have reprimanded him. However, facing the sincere and touched Grand Secretary Lu, thinking of his identity as the head of the Lu clan and the schemes hidden in his every wrinkle, Li Qitian forced himself to hold back and sighed without batting an eyelid. Although I was protected by the heavens and was able to conquer this country with the help of my officials, Minister Lu, you should know that Beiji, which I took over, is already in ruins. Sigh, that's right. Your Majesty has worked hard all these years. Minister Lu sighed as well. Li Qitian said, It doesn't matter if it's hard for me. What matters is the people. The national treasury is empty now. When the Tiger Army attacked Dian, the provisions and rewards promised have yet to be fulfilled. The people in the south have lost their homes because of the drought, and the Tatan in the north are eyeing us covetously. The country is in ruins and we need to calculate and spend money everywhere. But Minister Lu, you should know the situation of my national treasury. Minister Lu cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, this old official is willing to share Your Majesty's burden. This old official will go back and think of a way to raise money. Li Qitian was speechless by his answer. It sounded as if he was crying poor and asking for money from this old official. Would he be able to raise as much money as that treasure? This old thing was clearly pretending to be a fool in front of him, refusing to admit Lu Heng's mistake no matter what. Li Qitian's patience was running out. If it wasn't for the fact that he was an emperor and wasn't a peasant farmer, he would have already pounced on this sly old fox and beat him up to vent his anger. Li Qitian's suppressed anger made Li Guanwen take a few steps back. Minister Lu didn't notice it at all. His eyes were filled with tears as he promised, Your Majesty, this old official will definitely think of a way to raise money. This sentence was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Li Qitian suddenly stood up and said in a low voice, Minister Lu, I respect you, but don't push your luck. Minister Lu was stunned by the question. He hurriedly knelt down and put his forehead on the ground and said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, please don't be angry. This old official doesn't understand. You don't understand. I can see that you know very well. Let me ask you, do you know that I'm looking for the Dian treasure? This old official knows. Then why did you let your grandson escape with my treasure map? Ah. Minister Lu raised his head in shock and realized that it was inappropriate for him to look directly at Li Qitian. He hurriedly lowered his head and shook his head. That's impossible. How could such a thing happen? If this old official's grandson really got the treasure, he would have presented it to Your Majesty first. How could he? You mean that I'm framing your grandson, Lu Heng? This old official wouldn't dare. Minister Lu hurriedly kowtowed and said, Your Majesty, is there any misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? I just found out the whereabouts of the treasure map and ordered people to look for it. Then I saw your precious grandson leaving the capital with the treasure map under the escort of people. This old official doesn't know. Brother Hing didn't report this at all. That little bastard. How dare he do this? If this old official finds out where he went, I won't let him go. My dear official, do you mean that you don't know what he did? I really don't know. Minister Lu was so anxious that tears ran down his face. That bastard, how dare he do this? This is so infuriating, so infuriating. As Minister Lu cried, he began to have difficulty breathing. His hands trembled as he fell to the ground. Li Guanwen hurriedly went up to support him. Minister Lu, are you all right? He looked at Li Qitian inquiringly. If he didn't want to cause a disaster, he should have called for the imperial physician. Li Qitian gritted his teeth and glared at this old man. He really wanted him to just die here. However, if something happened to the head of the Lu family in the imperial study, it wouldn't look good and the consequences would be severe. Thinking of this, Li Qitian could only ask with concern, Minister Lu, are you all right? Quickly call for the imperial physician. This old official, I'm fine. This old official really infuriates this old official. Li Qitian almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he saw the loyal official's face cursing his unfilial grandson despite his pain. He simply turned around and didn't want to see it. Soon, the imperial physician arrived at the imperial study and treated Minister Lu. Your Majesty, Minister Lu is in the middle of spring and autumn. He was shocked and agitated, so he fainted for a while. I'll give him a prescription and he'll be fine after taking it. Minister Lu, please control your emotions and don't get too agitated. The imperial physician was an honest man and he didn't dare to look at Your Majesty's face. Therefore, he didn't notice that Li Qitian's face got darker with every sentence he said. Li Guanwen had already shrunk his shoulders and tried his best to reduce his presence. He was afraid that Your Majesty's anger would affect him. Li Qitian pursed his lips and looked at Minister Lu in silence. Minister Lu felt a chill down his spine. He hurriedly knelt down and bowed. Your Majesty, please forgive me. This old official will order someone to bring that unfilial son back and let Your Majesty punish him. How could he bear to hand over his favorite grandson? This was clearly a show of force to put him in a checkmate. If Li Qitian behaved too harshly, the aristocratic families would be on guard against him. However, being on guard was secondary. If the Lumin family was afraid and rebelled with the other aristocratic families, Li Qitian didn't think he had the ability to put out the fire. Therefore, even if he had a stomach full of anger, he could only swallow it in a cowardly manner. Forget it. It's not Minister Lu's fault. I didn't control my emotions well just now. Your Majesty, this old official is so ashamed. Minister Lu lay on the ground and burst into tears again. Li Qitian was annoyed to see him like this. However, there was nothing he could do, so he could only comfort him. In the end, not only did Li Qitian fail to denounce the old official, but he also had to appease the old official's emotions. He even ordered his chief eunuch to personally send the old official back to his residence and rewarded him with a pile of medicinal herbs and tonics. Li Qitian sat in the imperial study sulking and refused to see anyone. When Minister Lu returned home, he thanked Li Guanwen politely and even gave him a first-class red envelope. After Li Guanwen left, Minister Lu returned to the inner courtyard. As soon as he entered, he saw Lu Heng, who Li Qitian said should have left the capital, sitting on the Kong bed by the window, reading a book and eating snacks. Grandfather, you're back. Lu Heng was about to kneel and bow. Minister Lu waved his hand and sat down opposite Lu Heng. He also grabbed some snacks and ate them. Grandfather, did Your Majesty make things difficult for you? Minister Lu smiled. He wants to, but does he have the guts? Lu Heng smiled. If grandfather's words were heard by that person, his lungs would explode. You didn't see how he was just now. He was worried that it would be hard to explain if I died in his imperial study. I'm also worried that something bad might happen to him. Minister Lu smiled brightly. After a while, he said, you can go out tomorrow when you're ready. Safety is the most important thing when you're outside. We don't lack money. It doesn't matter if we can find the treasure or not. All that matters is that you come back safely. Even if we can't find it, we can't let him find it. But don't worry, grandfather. I'll just treat it as a trip. I'll take care of my own safety. Lu Heng smiled. Looking at his noble and handsome grandson, Minister Lu said seriously, Heng, you're not young anymore. About your second wife. Chapter 407. Could it be that you still miss that girl from the Qin family? Grand Secretary Lu kept her smile and looked at Lu Heng with a serious expression. Elder Lu still remembered clearly that day when Lu Heng came back from the Empress Dowager's palace covered in oil. He locked himself in his room for an entire day. As his elders, they were very anxious and asked him many times, but he refused to tell them the reason. It was only when he calmed down the next day that he told them what had happened. But it was too late. The news that Your Majesty had betrothed Prince Zhongshuan had already spread. The Lu family could only satisfy Lu Heng's desire by robbing the bride. But how could he go against the imperial power for a woman? Lu Heng could only accept it with regret. Lu Heng lowered his eyes and said calmly, unfortunately, the falling flower has feelings for the heartless brook. If she had any feelings for me, I would have tried my best to fight for her. She is getting married now. Such an intelligent and beautiful woman is going to marry a boorish man. This is all because of that man's selfishness. In order to consolidate his power, he did not hesitate to tie a good girl to a beast. Elder Lu saw that Lu Heng had lost control of his emotions because of this woman. Even when his deceased wife was still alive, they only treated each other with respect. He did not expect that his grandson was not cold. It was just that he had never met anyone who could truly move his heart. Grandfather, don't worry. Lu Heng calmed down after shouting that. He was back to his usual calm and gentle self. But the more he behaved like this, the more worried Elder Lu was. What kind of woman is that Miss Qin? Why do you care so much about her? Have you two dated before? How far have you gone? Lu Heng looked up at Elder Lu and said with a bitter smile, Grandfather, if she loves me, maybe we can really go that far. Do you think I will give her away? So, you two have never met before. We have only met a few times. But every time, my heart would beat faster. Her beauty could cause the downfall of a nation, and her intellect was outstanding. Competing with her in terms of wits was truly a delightful thing. This is the first time I've felt such pleasure from meeting my match with a woman. Lu Heng told Grand Secretary Lu the truth about Madame Lu being sent away. Even Secretary Lu was surprised by Qin Yining's intelligence. However, he still secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Without any interaction, Lu Heng wouldn't be hurt too deeply. However, he immediately began to feel that his grandson was not worth it. That woman had eyes but could not see. His grandson was so outstanding, yet she was not moved. It's her loss that she didn't take a fancy to you. Don't be too sad. There are plenty of fish in the sea. You're so outstanding, so there are plenty of ladies from aristocratic families who like you. Sooner or later, you'll meet a girl who's better than that family Qin girl. Looking at Grand Secretary Lu's concerned eyes, Lu Heng really couldn't bear to let her elderly grandfather worry about her anymore, so she could only nod. Grandfather, don't worry. While I'm out searching for treasure, I can also relax a bit. I'm sure I'll be able to adjust my emotions by the time I return to the capital. That's good too. Jiangnan has beautiful scenery, but the old country of Dian is suffering from a drought. Although it's better than last year, you still have to be careful. After a long drought, there's bound to be a flood. Your Majesty has been worried about this recently. He's worried that there will be a flood. You have to be careful when you're out. Yes, Grandfather, don't worry. I'll definitely be careful. Lu Heng smiled at Grand Secretary Lu. That night, he rested at Grand Secretary Lu's place. The next morning, while the sky was still dark, Lu Heng left the Lu residence with his men. When the city gates opened, he disguised himself as an ordinary farmer and followed a group of commoners out of the capital with a wheelbarrow. Apart from Grand Secretary Lu and Lu Heng's bodyguards, no one else knew about this. In the study of the outer courtyard of the family Qin residence, Qin Yining and Qin Huayuan had just finished breakfast. Last night, Qin Huayuan and the spies were released and returned. It was too late, so Qin Yining did not ask anything. He only prepared hot water for them to wash up and went to bed after breakfast. Therefore, they decided to talk about what happened after they left in the quiet morning. Father, how have you been these days? Qin Yining asked casually. Qin Huayuan's complexion was very good. He did not look like he had been imprisoned. Qin Huayuan picked up his teacup and took a sip. He smiled and said, I have good food and a good place to live in the palace. I was just detained. How would I know about the treasure? His Majesty probably saw that I really didn't know anything about it, so he didn't ask anymore. On the other hand, those spies were questioned many times. However, because of your plan, your majesty did not dare to be too harsh on them. He was afraid that those spies outside would be alarmed. Later, I heard from the little eunuch who served me that old Master Gu and Grand Secretary Lu were summoned to the palace one after another by your majesty. I felt that something was wrong. Qin Huaiyuan put down his teacup. The bottom of the teacup made a soft sound when it touched the tea table. Qin Huaiyuan pretended to be serious and said, "Sister Yi, tell me. What did you do this time?" Qin Yining blinked innocently and said, "Father, why are you so sure that I did something? Lass, do you think you can escape your father's eyes? Look at you, you look like a little mouse that has stolen honey." After saying this, Qin Huaiyuan was amused by his own description. He patted Qin Yining's head lovingly and said, "Why aren't you telling me the truth?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "Actually, it's not that complicated. Old Master Gu gave me an opportunity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to find a way to save you." Qin Yining then told Qin Huaiyuan how old Master Gu had come to negotiate with her, how she had rejected him, forged the treasure map, and then used old Master Gu to attract Li Qitian's attention. She had then diverted the trouble away from old Master Gu and besieged Wei to rescue Zhao. Qin Huaiyuan listened in silence. He thought of old Master Gu's doddering appearance with his white hair and beard. He wondered if the old man, who had always prided himself on his intelligence, would fly into a rage when he found out that he had fallen into her trap. Qin Huaiyuan silently mourned for him. "Father." Seeing that Qin Huaiyuan was silent, Qin Yining felt a little uneasy. Qin Huaiyuan returned to his senses and said with a smile, "It's fine. Lu Hang has already secretly taken them to search for the treasure. We'll be able to relax here. It's time for us to properly prepare for your wedding." Qin Yining rubbed his nose uncomfortably and said with his head lowered, "What's there to prepare for? You don't have to worry about that. You just need to focus on your pillow face embroidery. I heard from your mother that your pillow face embroidery is progressing very slowly." Qin Yining blushed at his question. "Father, don't tease your daughter. You let me sew roughly, and my stitches are quite sturdy. However, when it comes to embroidery and painting, although mother had Mammy teach me several times and I understand the principles behind it, I just don't have the patience. I always feel that it's a waste of time. You child." Ha! Qin Huaiyuan was amused by Qin Yining and laughed loudly. He patted Qin Yining's shoulder and said, "You're right. Embroidery and painting is a waste of time. If you have the time, you might as well read a few more books. Father has a new travel book here. You can take it back and read it later. As for the pillow face embroidery, you can just ask the maid to embroider it for you." Qin Yining clasped his hands together as if he had been pardoned. "Thank you, Father. You've saved me. If mother asks, I'll say that you told me to read the book." "Ha, good. If your mother asks, you'll say that I told you to." Qin Huaiyuan laughed again. "Lord, you're spoiling Sister Yi this much." Just as the father and daughter were colluding together to reach an agreement, the Sun clan's angry voice came from outside the door. Qin Huaiyuan touched the bridge of his nose with his index finger and stopped laughing. Qin Yining stood up and went to greet her. "Mother, why are you here? If I didn't come, I wouldn't have known that you two were secretly discussing and slacking off behind my back." The Sun clan looked at Qin Huaiyuan with a smile on her face. It was because Qin Huaiyuan rarely laughed so loudly. Seeing the father and daughter get along so well and her daughter become Qin Huaiyuan's joy, the Sun clan couldn't get angry at all even if they were discussing how to not embroider pillow face embroidery. "Madam, come and sit down." Qin Huaiyuan pointed to the seat opposite him. Qin Yining helped the Sun clan sit down. The Sun clan tapped her forehead. "You don't always listen to your father. Your father is a man, how can he understand these things? Which girl doesn't embroider by herself? Those noble ladies even embroider their own wedding dresses. You're the daughter of a minister. If you don't do any needlework, won't people look down on you? Mother, that's where you're wrong. If people see my embroidery, it'll be easy for people to look down on me. The Sun clan was choked by her words and couldn't help but tacitly agree. Chin Yining's embroidery wasn't particularly bad, but it couldn't be said to be good either. What kind of place was the prince's mansion? The embroidery pieces and furnishings were all exquisite. When the two rooms were compared, the embroidery that was just passable would be a bit rougher. All right. The Sun clan sighed. I'll help you find an embroiderer. We'll make the most exquisite embroidery. Chin Yining hugged the Sun clan happily. Thank you, mother. Qin Huayuan timely stuffed a few newly obtained books into Chin Yining's hands. In return, the Sun clan rolled her eyes. The father and daughter both smiled like foxes who had succeeded in their schemes. While the family Qin faction was happy and harmonious, Peng Zhao's expression was austere in the study of the outer courtyard of the Prince Zhongshuan's residence. Xia Yu and Su Weiji were the representatives of the Prince Zhongshuan's residence. All of them had solemn expressions on their faces. Wang Yi had called them here early in the morning for a meeting. It seemed that something major had happened that couldn't be resolved. Everyone felt as if a stone was pressing down on their hearts. They all looked at Pang Xiao, who was sitting at the head of the table. Pang Xiao said in a deep voice, I've called everyone here today because there's an important matter to discuss. Wang Yi, please speak. This king wants to discuss the wedding on the 11th of next month with all of you. There's just been an unforeseen event in the family Qin. There shouldn't be any more unforeseen events, right? All the strategists, Wang Yi, you've gathered all of us here so early in the morning. It's not because of national affairs or the matter of the treasure, but because of the wedding that's already set in stone. Everyone was like a deflated balloon. Their tense nerves immediately relaxed. Then, they burst into laughter, but they still had to hold back their laughter. Chapter 408. Pang Xiao looked at the crowd sternly. What? Is there really going to be a change? Ahem. Su Weiji stood up with a smile and smiled at Pang Xiao comfortingly. Wang Yi, don't be nervous. Your father-in-law, old Taishan, is an intelligent person. Miss Qin is even more intelligent. No matter what happens in the Qin's mansion, Minister Qin and Miss Qin can solve it perfectly. As for the Wang's mansion, with Wang Yi in charge, any problem can be solved easily. Yes, yes. All the strategists nodded in unison. Pang Zhao's heartstrings relaxed slightly after hearing his comforting words. His tense shoulders also loosened. What you said makes sense. Pang Xiao nodded seriously. All the strategists couldn't help but find it interesting. Wang Yi, who was usually extremely intelligent and shrewd, actually had such a childish side. He looked like a young man. But on second thought, Wang Yi had no experience in relationships. In terms of relationships, he was really a young man. Everyone had been young before, and they all knew what it felt like to be moved by a woman. Regardless of the outcome of their relationship, whether they could be together with the woman they loved, they could still understand this feeling of anticipation, nervousness, and worry about gains and losses. Everyone couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It was so good to be young. Xia Yu stood up and said with a kind smile, Wang Yi, in my opinion, you really don't have to worry. 2 days ago, you mentioned the matter of old Master Gu. Minister Qin was still locked up in the palace, and he was afraid that Miss Qin couldn't solve it. But you see, no matter how much you prepared, it was useless. Miss Qin solved the problem single-handedly. Yes. Miss Qin is really the most intelligent woman I've ever seen in my life. Everyone echoed. Pang Xiao nodded seriously. You're right. When they saw Pang Xiao's reaction, everyone suddenly felt that they had found a new way to please Wang Yi. Some of the strategists who usually wanted to get close to Wang Yi and become core members of his staff started praising Qin Yining. They had seen Qin Yining before and knew how smart she was. Naturally, their praises were well-founded. Pang Xiao listened attentively and felt comfortable all over. It was as comfortable as soaking in a hot spring. He couldn't help but nod repeatedly, and his tense face also relaxed a lot. Xia Yu and Su Weiji looked at each other. Both of their faces were tense. If not for this, they would have laughed out loud. In their hearts, Wang Yi had always been an extremely intelligent person. Now that they could see such a down-to-earth side of him, they were already laughing in their hearts. Pang Xiao said, there are a few things we need to pay attention to now. First, we need to prevent people from causing trouble before the wedding. Second, we need to prevent people from causing trouble at the wedding. Third, the list of betrothal gifts has already been given. We need to choose an auspicious day to send it to the right person. Fourth, how should we do it on the day of the makeup ceremony? Fifth, and this is also the most important point. At this point, Pang Xiao took a deep breath. Everyone's expressions also became serious. Pang Xiao said, the most important thing is that this king's future father-in-law is extremely talented and knowledgeable. Naturally, there is no lack of people around him who are equally intelligent. I'm just afraid that on the day of the wedding, their relatives will block the door and ask tricky questions. What should we do then? Everyone, Wang Yi, you're not even afraid of fighting a bloody battle between two armies, but you're actually afraid of a few questions that block the door. The strategists felt that they still didn't know Wang Yi well enough. Ahem. Xia Yu cleared her throat and tried to hold back her laughter. Wang Yi, you don't need to worry about people causing trouble before the wedding. Firstly, the Liu family's matter has attracted some people's attention. Secondly, your wedding is bestowed by your majesty. The imperial edict is still enshrined in the ancestral hall. Who would have the guts to cause trouble? As for those brainless people who want to cause trouble, most of them are just clowns. There's nothing to be afraid of. Wang Yi, don't worry. Pang Xiao nodded slowly. Su Weiji also said, you don't need to worry too much about people causing trouble at the wedding. I think, with your majesty's brotherly love for Wang Yi, he will definitely arrange the wedding properly. Who knows, maybe your majesty will even bring the empress to attend the ceremony. With your majesty around, we naturally don't need to worry. Even if your majesty doesn't come, Wang Yi still has Jinghu Wei around. Jinghu Wei is a soldier of our residence. He doesn't need the tiger seal to mobilize these elites. That's right. Xia Yu added, Wang Yi can also contact Prince Consort Ji. Prince Consort Ji is now in charge of the Tiger Army. He also has close to 100 soldiers in his residence. He can also borrow them to maintain order. Su Weiji and Xia Yu didn't make their words too clear, but Pang Xiao already understood what they meant. Although Ji Ziyu was the commander-in-chief of the Tiger Army, he was confident that he had a good reputation in the Tiger Army. Ji Ziyu's soldiers were drawn from the Tiger Army. Borrowing these people was no different from mobilizing his own subordinates. Okay. Pang Xiao nodded and said with satisfaction, let's not talk about other things. The soldiers we train ourselves are first class in martial arts. It's not like we're going to have a gang fight. What's the point of looking at martial arts? Wang Yi was really overjoyed that he was going to get married. Xia Yu said with amusement, the most important thing is that you have to choose some good-looking people. Wang Yi, think about it. The young people are wearing military uniforms. They're neat and majestic. How stylish. Yes, yes. Pang Shao nodded repeatedly. It's settled. This king will go back and discuss with Jilan. As for the betrothal gifts, Su Weiji said, Old Madam and Old Master have already prepared the betrothal gifts. Because they were worried that they would overstep the boundaries, they prepared 208 betrothal gifts, which are all really good things. It's not convenient for Wang Yi to show up when the betrothal gifts are sent. Old Master will arrange for the appropriate people to go. That's good. Pang Shao nodded, but felt that it was not enough. Give this king 2 more carts of gold. I want small yellow croakers. They should be neatly stacked. 210 carts is just enough to make it a round number. Everyone was stunned. 2 carts of small yellow croakers. How much gold would that be? Everyone could already imagine how many people would be blinded by the small yellow croakers shining in the sun. Wang Yi, this gold is too eye-catching. What if people talk about it? Besides, your majesty is short of money now. Pang Shao waved his hand indifferently. If they want it, they can come and snatch it. This king will only marry once in his life. The good girl that he raised for so many years is given to me. My betrothal gifts are too little. Sister Yi is also wronged. Besides, my father-in-law, old Tai Shan, is not an ordinary minister. He is an existence that can change the world with a flip of the hand. Adding 2 more carts of small yellow croakers is not much. Xia Yu was speechless. But thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Chapter 409. This was because the remaining elders of Beiji had all surrendered. It could be said that they were not loyal to their king or their country, but rather opportunists who knew how to adapt to the current situation. Even if these people did not engage in excessive taxation, they still had a large amount of wealth in their hands. In comparison, Wang Yi was considered poor. Your Majesty naturally understood this situation. If they wanted money, everyone had to fork out. It was not only Pang Shao who had to fork out the money. Thinking up to this point, everyone felt relieved. After discussing a few issues, Pang Shao felt much more at ease. He thought for a while and said, You are all intelligent people, and there are many of you who have outstanding literary talent. Help this king write a make-up hastening poem. You must write it well. Also, think carefully about the problem of blocking the door. Write a list for this king, and this king will memorize it later. Su Weiji and Xia Yu stood up and bowed with everyone else, yes. After Pang Shao gave the strategists their homework, he went out. The strategists looked at each other and could not help but laugh. A few of them who were talented in literary talent went to study the make-up hastening poem together. A few smart ones began to list the answers to some questions based on the weddings they had attended so that Pang Shao could revise before the exam. Su Weiji went to the inner residence to discuss with Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma about adding 2 more carriages of small yellow croakers. Pang Shao went out and ordered someone to prepare a horse. Then, he went out of the city to walk the horse alone. Huzi followed Pang Zhao's instructions and quietly went to the prince consort's residence to ask Ji Ziyu to meet him. When Ji Ziyu arrived at the invitation, he saw Pang Shao. He was clad in a black brocade robe. A jade belt was tied around his waist, and a purple golden crown was on his head. He was riding his warhorse called Black Cloud. Its entire body was jet black and shiny. It was galloping along the moat. Dark Cloud's body was oily black, and it shone under the sunlight. The man on the horse seemed to have merged with it. Leaning on the horse's back, the man and the horse rushed past like lightning, disappearing into the dark green shadows of the trees. Ji Ziyu did not ride his fiery red warhorse today. Instead, he rode the snow-white warhorse that he had captured from Qin Yining. It was a gift from Pang Shao to Qin Yining. Its coat was silver-white, and its name was White Cloud. Ever since he started following Jiziyu, he had been taking care of White Cloud. White Cloud and Jiziyu were now very close. Jiziyu was wearing a red t-shirt. His hair was tied up high and fluttering in the wind. His posture was straight, his face was peerless, and his expression was cold. The gorgeous red clothes on his body did not make him look feminine at all. It only made people feel that he was as cold as ice and unapproachable. Pang Xiao ran one round beside the willow embankment of the moat, and not long after, he galloped back on his horse. When he saw Jiziyu from afar, he grinned and waved the horsewhip in his hand. "All on, do you want to run one round?" Jiziyu smiled slightly, nodded, and waved the horsewhip. "Go!" White Cloud transformed into a silver ray of light and rushed forward. Pang Xiao also urged Dark Cloud, and the two Fergana horses galloped quickly. The two Dezhou generals on the horses' backs whipped their horses, and they both felt carefree. They were in the imperial court, and they had no choice. What they lacked was this kind of indulgence and pleasure. The two of them ran a few rounds, and then slowly rode along the small path, one in front of the other, into the distance. Jiziyu asked, "Jishi, why are you looking for me?" "I have something to ask for your help." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "I'm afraid that someone will cause trouble for my wedding next month, so I want to borrow your government soldiers to help me suppress the situation." Jiziyu raised his eyes in surprise when he heard this. He met Pang Xiao's smiling eyes and said with a smile, "I'll personally bring people over at that time." Pang Xiao didn't expect Jiziyu to agree so easily. He said with some worry, "Your Majesty will definitely think too much at that time." "It's okay. If your Majesty asks, I'll say that I'm worried that your government soldiers will cause trouble, so I'll bring the soldiers to deter them." Jiziyu said without thinking. Pang Xiao was moved when he heard this. He stretched out his arm and patted Jiziyu's shoulder. "Good brother, thank you very much." Jiziyu looked at the big hand on his shoulder and then said with a smile, "Master Guan saw it clearly when I kowtowed to the ground. We were brothers at that time, so we'll be brothers for life." Pang Xiao looked at Jiziyu's bright smile, and his smile widened. "You're indeed my brother. I'll rush the makeup on the 10th day of the new year. You must accompany me." Jiziyu nodded and said with a gentle smile, "Of course. I also want to see what kind of family raised what kind of daughter to charm your heart." Speaking of this, Jiziyu said with some disappointment, "Jishi, have you really accepted this marriage and let go of your hatred?" Back then, in the imperial court, Qin Huaiyuan made a scene and forced your Majesty to issue an imperial edict. Jiziyu went back and was angry for several days. "Minister Qin is too cunning. He forced your Majesty to issue an imperial edict. Either he punished you so that you wouldn't have the ability to take revenge, or he tried to rope you in and make you his son-in-law so that you wouldn't be able to take revenge. This person is unfathomable. I'm really worried that you'll be schemed against." Jiziyu could see that Pang Xiao liked Qin Yining. So there was one thing he didn't say. He was really worried that Qin Yining was Qin Huaiyuan's honey trap to Pang Xiao. But now, this kind of worry seemed so unnecessary. Because looking at Pang Xiao's cheerful appearance, he had obviously let go of his hatred for his father and was willing to fall into the trap. Now that things had come to this, what else could he do? The imperial edict had been issued, and he had fallen into the honey trap, but Pang Xiao was still so happy. He was so happy that it was as if he was a different person. They had been friends since they were young. After so many years, this was the first time Jiziyu saw Pang Xiao let go of his hatred and smile so easily. "Your marriage isn't a small matter. Now that I'm leading the troops you used to lead, although the Taitan is in internal strife and has no time to invade the south, if there's another war, I think your majesty will very likely let you lead the Dragon Legion. I'm your majesty's brother-in-law now. He trusts me and naturally wants me to stay in the capital to protect him. You're more likely to be sent out. You're right. Pang Xiao heard Ji Ziyu's analysis and nodded seriously. I also guessed that your majesty would have this arrangement. Your majesty also thought of a good idea to swap you and me. Ji Ziyu said, so your marriage will definitely be noticed by the Titan. Look at you now, you're so happy that it's as if you've changed into a different person. It can be seen that when you get married, you might let down your guard. The Titan people are afraid of me, and even more afraid of you, who is famous for your fighting prowess. They are very cunning, and they might do something. When the time comes, I'll bring the prefecture soldiers, and we can be on guard. Chapter 4:10. When Ji Ziyu heard this, he lowered his eyes and smiled. Actually, there's nothing wrong with letting go of your hatred. You and your family are not fated to be together. Your father doesn't even know that you exist in this world. Now that you can let go of your hatred, you have less burden and pressure. What's wrong with living a carefree life in the future? You don't have to accept those stubborn reasons. As long as you can be happy. Pang Xiao was moved by Ji Ziyu's words. Only those who truly cared about him would care about his emotions and whether he was happy or not. All this time, he and Ji Ziyu had a tacit understanding of each other, making use of each other and guarding against each other. However, Pang Xiao knew that even so, it was only a means to protect themselves. They had never taken the initiative to hurt each other. It was extremely rare to be able to maintain this friendship in such a chaotic situation in the imperial court. All on, thank you. Pang Xiao smiled at Ji Ziyu. His smile was filled with pure joy. Ji Ziyu looked at Pang Xiao's handsome face and could not help but smile. There's no need to be so polite between brothers. Pang Xiao smiled again when he heard this. The two of them rode their horses forward slowly. Pang Xiao laughed and said, if His Majesty finds out about our current relationship, I wonder how angry he will be. Ji Ziyu also smiled, there's nothing we can do about it. Life has to go on. We can talk about brotherhood with your majesty, but we have to stay alive. Moreover, you have a family to feed now. It's not good for you to throw caution to the wind and completely disregard your family's elders and daughter-in-law. Pang Xiao nodded when he heard this. Actually, the three of us were sworn brothers back then. If His Majesty hadn't been so suspicious and scheming against me, I wouldn't have minded risking my life for my brothers. Unfortunately, things don't go as I wish. Ji Ziyu also nodded with some regret, then smiled and said, you don't have to be so sad. Feelings between people are mutual. He schemed against us, so we have to guard against him. But it's different between you and me. Although we sometimes have some tacit understanding, I'm still willing to risk my life for you. Pang Xiao knew how cold Ji Ziyu was. But now, Ji Ziyu was able to say it so calmly. Pang Xiao could only see sincerity in his eyes, without the slightest falsehood or calculation. Me too, Pang Xiao said from the bottom of his heart. When Ji Ziyu heard this, he looked at Pang Xiao and couldn't help but laugh heartily. That's enough. Fortunately, the two of us were able to maintain our original intentions. Pang Xiao also felt quite fortunate. The two of them urged their horses to gallop around the forest. After saying goodbye, they went back to the city through different city gates. After Ji Ziyu entered the city, he didn't immediately return to the prince consort's residence. Instead, he circled around and arrived outside the Qin Manor. He held White Cloud and stood in a secluded alley diagonally opposite the Qin Manor. Only half of his body was exposed, and the other half was blocked by a thick tree trunk. He expressionlessly looked at the bustling family Qin on the other side. For Qin Yining's marriage, the family Qin was also bustling with preparations. There were many people moving in front of the manor, and it was very lively. Ji Ziyu didn't know why he was standing here. At this time, his heart was empty, and he silently looked at the family Qin people coming and going in front of the door. When he returned to the city, for a moment, he really wanted to ask if Qin Yining's feelings for Pang Xiao were serious, or if he was just afraid that Pang Xiao would take revenge and purposely seduced her. But now, he felt that his thoughts were unreasonable. Firstly, he didn't have this position. Secondly, Your Majesty decreed this marriage, so this marriage was already set in stone. To put it bluntly, as long as the two of them were still breathing, no matter what happened, they would still have to get married. Since things had already come to this, what was the use of saying more? Moreover, Pang Xiao liked Qin Yining so much. Even if Qin Yining was a bit arrogant and willful, perhaps Pang Xiao would still find it interesting. Ji Ziyu lowered his eyes for a moment and laughed self-mockingly. He took the reins and wanted to leave. Unexpectedly, at this time, he suddenly saw a carriage turn the corner and slowly stop in front of the Qin manor. A familiar and graceful figure got off the carriage with the help of a servant girl and was about to head into the manor. White Cloud, who was beside Ji Ziyu, seemed to recognize the figure. It impatiently kicked its horse's hooves and gave a long neigh. Ji Ziyu stroked White Cloud's mane to appease it. Unexpectedly, Qin Yining seemed to have sensed something and looked in his direction. The two of them looked at each other. Qin Yining was a bit surprised. She had just gone to Master Zhong's manor to discuss opening an inn in the capital. She had also promised Master Zhong that he would come to the wedding banquet. Unexpectedly, she had just returned when she heard the neigh of a horse. Qin Yining vaguely felt that it was familiar. She turned around and saw the red-clothed youth who was half hidden behind a big tree. However, his presence didn't weaken at all. Ji Ziyu was really too handsome. He was so handsome that his presence was so strong that it was impossible to ignore him. Qin Yining looked around. She wasn't sure if Your Majesty's people were watching them. She also wasn't sure if Ji Ziyu knew that the Qin family might be under surveillance. However, if there really was surveillance, the spies would have seen Ji Ziyu as soon as he came. If she didn't take the initiative to go over and talk, it would seem that there was something fishy going on. Thinking of this, Qin Yining brought Ji Yun around the carriage and walked towards Ji Ziyu. Ji Ziyu had already returned to his cold and frosty appearance. He looked expressionlessly at Qin Yining, who was gradually walking towards him. He had to admit that Qin Yining had the capital to move Pang Zhao's heart. She had the capital to cause the downfall of a country. Moreover, although she was bright and beautiful, she didn't make people feel that she was vulgar. She also didn't have the fawning face of many women. Instead, there was wisdom between her brows. One look and one could tell that she was a knowledgeable person. Prince Consort Ji. Why are you here? Why don't you come in and have a seat? Qin Yining approached and bowed with a smile. Ji Ziyu said coldly, I'm just passing by. I saw that your family was preparing something lively, so I came to take a look. Qin Yining smiled and said, Thank you for your concern, Prince Consort Ji. I'm not concerned. I'm just passing by. Ji Ziyu's tone was cold and stiff. Qin Yining felt a little awkward when she heard this. She smiled awkwardly. She could tell that Ji Ziyu had always hated her. She didn't know what she had done to provoke him. Could it be that he still hated her for being the daughter of Pang Zhao's father's murderer? Qin Yining coughed and said, All right then. Since Prince Consort Ji has other matters to attend to, I won't force you to come. Prince Consort Ji will definitely invite you to the wedding banquet another day. Ji Ziyu looked at her expressionlessly and didn't react. Qin Yining felt that she might have really offended Ji Ziyu. Otherwise, How could a godlike figure who could lead troops into battle be so inarticulate? To put it bluntly, it was just that he treated people coldly and disliked her. Qin Yining didn't want to continue asking for a snub, so she turned around to return to the residence. However, she heard Ji Ziyu ask, "Miss Qin, do you truly like Pang Zhishi? Will you treat him with sincerity? If it involves the love and hatred between the two families, will you be able to put Pang Zhishi first and everything else second?" Qin Yining was stunned when she heard this. She abruptly looked up at Ji Ziyu. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."